Chapter 1570. With that, Shen Luo and walked away with light steps. His back was facing Li Jinan. His figure was lean and straight. Li Jinan watched his back and slowly said, "Thank you." His voice was very soft. When Shen Luo and heard that, he paused. He didn't look back. Instead, he looked straight ahead and walked at a steady pace. What? She's pregnant? A furious voice came from Guan Yanhong's office. Is it really such a coincidence that she's pregnant at this time? The assistant pushed up his glasses and replied matter-of-factly, "According to reliable sources, it's probably true." Guan Yanhong was enraged. That be *ts. Is her luck really that good? The assistant didn't say anything else. He looked at Guan Yanhong and silently handed over the documents in his hands. Mrs. Medical records have been leaked. Guan Yanhong was shocked and turned to look at him. How much? A little? Not much. However, what was leaked was more private. The assistant flipped open the documents. The incident that happened years ago has been completely exposed. The defendant has already collected this evidence. The old accounts from 7 or 8 years ago have been dug up. Guan Yanhong stepped forward and snatched the documents from the assistant's hands. He quickly scanned through them. All the medical treatments that Guan Kui had received over the years, as well as all the voice recordings, had been exposed as evidence for the defendant. Guan Yanhong looked through them and was shocked. He roared in anger, "How could these things be exposed? Everything has been fine for so many years. How could they be exposed now?" The incident of Guan Kui falling off the cliff years ago had infuriated Guan Yanhong. Especially when Guan Kui had revealed that the incident had something to do with Yi Yuyu, Guan Yanhong had given Yi Tian the cold shoulder. In the first few days, Yi Tian had still protected Yi Yuyu. Later on, when she realized that he was really angry, she had started to help him and had given Yi Yuyu the cold shoulder. Guan Yanhong hadn't done anything to Yi Yuyu, but Yi Tian had taken the initiative to tell him everything he had wanted to do and say. In the end, Yi Yuyu couldn't take it anymore and moved out. It was only when Guan Kui woke up that Guan Yanhong found out the whole story. Although that incident had nothing to do with Yi Yuyu, at the bottom of it all, it had something to do with her. If it hadn't been for Yi Yuyu's appearance, Shen Luo and would never have taken a liking to Yi Yuyu and would never have given Guan Kui the cold shoulder. In the end, Guan Yanhong transferred all his resentment to Yi Yuyu. When he found out that Yi Yuyu's life had been miserable for so many years, Guan Yanhong felt a pang of pleasure. That was the kind of retribution a SL*T deserved. However, Guan Kui's mental state soon deteriorated. She found it difficult to stand. That was a huge blow to Guan Kui. When Guan Yanhong found out that Yi Yuyu had gotten her wish of marrying Shen Luo, he immediately summoned Shen Luo and to Guan Kui. When Shen Luo saw the crazed look on Guan Kui's face, his heart was filled with guilt and disgust. When he found out that Yi Yuyu had been hospitalized due to her fall, Guan Yanhong knew that he was halfway to success. He told Guan Kui about the incident. Unexpectedly, Guan Kui's mental state miraculously improved. As a result, Guan Yanhong began to arrange for Guan Kui to be admitted to another hospital. Never in a million years would he have imagined that such a thing would happen to Guan Kui at her wedding. Chapter 1571. If it hadn't been for Yi Yuyu, his daughter would still be alive. She would still be by his side. No. I don't care what you do. I'm going to kill Yi Yuyu. Isn't she pregnant? I'm going to make that B** have an abortion. Guan Yanhong clenched his teeth as he gripped the document in his hand. Soon the paper was wrinkled. He stared at his assistant and enunciated each word clearly. I'm going to make her pay. The assistant nodded his head and pushed up his glasses. With an indifferent expression he said, I'll make the arrangements. When Guan Yanhong heard his assistant's words, he laughed mirthlessly. He stared at the document in his hand and said, So what if you know? The evidence is clear. Yi Yuyu can't escape. Yi Yuyu sat in the empty cell. Her hand gently stroked her abdomen. She felt incredulous. She was pregnant. Her flat abdomen contained a tiny life. That tiny life was Li Jinan's. She had imagined many scenarios of her pregnancy. Perhaps she had found out about her little secret through a pregnancy test in a joyful and unexpected room. Or in the hospital, she was filled with disbelief and anticipation, waiting for another person to announce that she was pregnant. She had never imagined that it would be at such an awkward time. She had been in prison for a few days. Her mental state had deteriorated and she had fainted. When she woke up, she had been told that she was pregnant. Yi Yuyu would never forget that magical moment for the rest of her life. The rhythmic sound of footsteps came from outside. It was the prison warden. Yi Yuyu knew it. When she looked up, the prison door had been opened. The female warden looked at her. Her complexion was much better than it had been a few days ago, but her tone was still emotionless as she said, "Your man is here to see you. Come on out." Perhaps it was because she knew that she was a mother, but Yi Yu was no longer as afraid of death as she had been a few days ago. Her heart was as calm as still water. Yi Yu stood up and followed the warden out. When she heard that familiar and magical term of address, she felt a sense of wonder. When she walked out, she saw Li Jinan sitting outside the glass partition. When Li Jinan saw Yi Yu, he placed his hand on the glass and looked at her face. His gaze slowly moved down to her hand, which was resting on her abdomen. Yi Yu could clearly see a joyful smile on Li Jinan's face. She walked over and sat down. Feeling a little aggrieved, she said, "You're here." Li Jinan nodded. "I'm here. I brought you something to eat. I'll get the guards to pass it to you. Remember to eat some later." "Yeah." Yi Yu lowered her head and whispered, "Do you know?" "What do you know?" "About my pregnancy." "Yeah, I just found out." Li Jinan's eyes crinkled as he said, "The timing is right." "So, are the things you bought for me supplements for pregnant women?" "Yes." "So, you're taking care of your child, not me?" Yi Yu felt even more aggrieved. She looked at him and reached out her hand to meet his through the glass. "Tell me, if I can't get out of here for the rest of my life, should I give birth to the child in prison?" Chapter 1572. Dignified. Yi Yu repeated the words. "What do you mean by dignified? We're pregnant before marriage, and given my current situation, I'll get you out," Li Jinan said. "When the time comes, we'll get married. When you're out, I'll start making arrangements. I won't let you give birth to a child without a title. My wife and my child must receive everyone's blessings. Yi Yu, I'll marry you." He gazed at Yi Yu with a serious expression. Yi Yu's heart raced. She was surrounded by darkness. In the dry and emotionless prison cell, it was as if it was suddenly filled with radiance. It was all because of the man in front of her. Yi Yu's heart raced. She looked at him and asked, "Are you sure you can do it?" "Yes." Li Jinan's voice was calm as he looked at her hand. His eyes were filled with regret and loneliness. "I really want to hug you and touch our child. Even if it's just your hand, I'd be happy." Yi Yu felt the same way. This layer of glass separated them from each other. They were so close, but they couldn't touch each other. This feeling of distance was unbearable. Yi Yu looked at Li Jinan and pursed her lips. She asked, "What about your mother after I get out? You even have her grandchild." "She won't reject it," Li Jinan said. "What if?" "There's no what if. Even if she doesn't accept it, my grandfather won't sit idly by." Li Jinan's eyes shone like stars as he slowly said, "I'll get you out. Don't be afraid. It won't be long." "I'm not afraid." Yi Yu's face heated up. "I believe you, but I'm afraid that when I get out, the child will grow up. What if I can't fit into the wedding gown?" Yi Yu's voice grew softer. As she spoke, she looked at him and asked in a small voice, "Am I thinking too much?" "No. That's a problem," Li Jinan said. His brows furrowed in thought. "In that case, I'll have to get you out as soon as possible. When the time comes, we'll deal with it quickly. What do you think? Marriage needs to be settled quickly?" Yi Yu was a little taken aback. A wedding should be a little more exquisite. Not only did it have to be exquisite, it had to be romantic and sensational. Could it be that Li Jinan wants us to just get a marriage certificate and be done with it? Just like when she was with Shenluo, and? At that thought, she instinctively rubbed her belly and said, "I'm carrying your child in my belly. You can't just brush me off." Li Jinan couldn't help but laugh. "Why would I?" He reached out and placed his hand on hers. In a serious tone, he said, "When I said to end this quickly, I was referring to the matter regarding Guan Kui. Today Shenluo and came looking for me." Shenluo and these three words seemed to have been separated from him for several centuries. When Yi Yu heard that, she felt a little dazed. After a moment of silence, she asked, "Why was he looking for you?" "He told me that Guan Kui might not be dead yet." Yi Yu was stunned. She looked at him in disbelief. Li Jinan looked at her with a serious expression. "It's not impossible. You know what kind of person Guan Kui is. Do you think it's possible?" Chapter 1573. When Li Jinan heard that, his eyes darkened. "How did you know?" "I know Guan Yanhong very well. After all, we've lived together for more than a decade. I have some understanding of his temperament. Everyone knows that Guan Yanhong's daughter was poisoned in the hotel on the day of her wedding. After 2 days of resuscitation she couldn't be saved and died. Li Jinan looked at Yi Yuyu and said, "This incident is extremely sensational." Yi Yuyu looked at Li Jinan and saw his frown deepen. She explained, "Guan Yanhong was a little superstitious. If Guan Kui was still alive he would never have held a funeral for her. To Guan Yanhong such a thing is extremely inauspicious. There is no way he is still alive." Li Jinan's frown deepened. When Yi Yuyu saw the expression on his face she called out, "Li Jinan. Guan Kui is already dead. She wanted to frame me and I couldn't escape. Now that I'm pregnant, it's impossible for Guan Yanhong to get anyone to sentence me to death. But if I lose my child, don't speak nonsense." Li Jinan retorted, but immediately, a white light flashed in his mind. Immediately, his sharp dark eyes pondered for a moment and he muttered, "Maybe, we can think of a way." "You've thought of it? What is it?" "Please have a taste of your own medicine." The fact that Yi Yuyu had been transferred to prison caught Guan Yanhong by surprise. They were transferred to a women's prison. The women who were squatting there were either thieves or swindlers. The more serious ones might be lost girls who had lost their way or vicious murderers. When Yi Yuyu entered, many people looked at her as if she were a monkey. Especially when they saw Yi Yuyu's fair and clean appearance, some of the wilder and wilder women with buzz cuts whistled at her. Yi Yuyu was very well behaved the entire way. She kept her head down as she entered the prison. The Li family in Kingstown. Qin Shuhua had always felt uneasy. He paced back and forth on the sofa, his mind filled with thoughts about Li Jinan's girlfriend going to jail. Over the past few days, Qin Shuhua had sought out many of her friends to inquire about the matter. She had originally thought that since Li Jinan wasn't willing to tell her, she would have plenty of means to investigate the matter thoroughly. It was just that he didn't expect that not only was this matter cleared up, but he also dug out a heavy bomb. Yi Yuyu had been married before. Moreover, the man Yi Yuyu married was the brother of Oming's fiancée. She was the wife of the brother who was messing around with his sister. Knowing this, Qin Shuhua could not eat or drink for the next few days. Her mind was filled with this matter. Li Xiao could tell what was on her mind. After asking a little, Qin Shuhua told him everything with a sad face. After hearing this, Li Xiao was silent for a while. Qin Shuhua panicked when she saw that. She immediately said, "Of course we can't let a woman like that be together. Jinan doesn't have much experience. A woman like that is very scheming. If he ends up being fooled by her, who is he going to complain to?" When Li Xiao heard that, he fell silent again. After a long while, he said, "Do you think it's more likely that she's lying to Jinan, or that Jinan is lying to her?" Chapter 1574. Good boy? Li Xiao smiled and shook his head at Qin Shuhua. Qin Shuhua was unhappy when she saw her husband's expression. She rebuked, "What's with that expression? Why don't you think of something? Not only is this woman married, but she's also in jail. If this gets out, what will others say about us? Jinan will have his own ideas on this matter. You don't have to worry about it." Li Xiao waved his hands and didn't seem to care. But Qin Shuhua wasn't happy about it. She said, "No way, old Li. Does this mean that you agree to them being together?" "It's not up to me to decide whether I agree or not. Didn't you say that the girl is in jail? Even if I agree they have to release her first." When Qin Shuhua heard that, she couldn't figure out what Li Xiao meant. She looked at him and frowned. Li Xiao stood up from the sofa and ignored her. He turned sideways and walked away. Qin Shuhua still couldn't figure out what he meant. She quickly walked up and asked, "Old Li, what do you mean?" Li Xiao didn't answer. Qin Shuhua asked again, "Do you mean that the girl won't be released?" Li Xiao was speechless. "Say something." Li Xiao said, "I'm going to take a shower." "No, you have to make it clear to me." Qin Shuhua followed him but didn't catch him. Li Xiao quickly went into the bathroom. Qin Shuhua was blocked outside the door. She stomped her feet angrily and picked up her phone to call her obedient grandson in the capital. It was the third day of Li Jianxian's arrival in the capital. Everything in the capital was different from Kingstown. Not only had the environment changed, but the people around him were also very different from when he was in Kingstown. For the past 3 days, Li Jianxian had been playing the role of a good child. When Grandpa asked him to eat, he ate. When Grandma asked him to eat, he ate. Today, Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian both suggested taking him to the movies. Li Jianxian only said one word, "Okay." The neighbors all praised Li Jianxian for being obedient and sensible. But only Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue, as the parties involved, knew that for a child, such obedience was not a good thing. Once again sitting face to face with his wife, Rong Haiyue frowned and said, "Xian, is it not good for us to treat the child like this?" Rong Xian looked at Rong Haiyue and hesitated. They had always known that Li Jianxian was well-behaved and obedient. But these days they found that the child did not seem to be happy. Rong Xian sighed and said, "Why don't we send the child back? After all, the child is still young. Don't let him get sick. Desu is sensible but, Grandpa, Li Jianxian said. The couple's backs stiffened, and they turned to look behind them. Li Jianxian walked over in thin cotton slippers and asked, "Don't you like me?" Hearing this, they knew that the child must have heard something, and they all looked a little embarrassed. At the same time he felt guilty. Rong Haiyue reached out to Li Jianxian and said, "Desu, come here." Li Jianxian followed the instructions and walked over, as obedient as a puppet. His expression was wooden and there was not much fluctuation. It was just that compared to his father he was less cold and more tender. Chapter 1575. Go back to Kingstown? Li Jianxian was still young and didn't know how to hide his emotions. When he heard those words, his eyes immediately lit up. Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian were both smart. When they saw his expression, they knew that he definitely wanted to go back. But unexpectedly, Li Jianxian's eyes immediately dimmed. He shook his head and slowly said, "No." Rong Xian was a little surprised. "Do you mean you don't want to stay with Grandpa and Grandma, or don't want to go back to Kingstown?" Rong Haiyue had the same doubts. He reached out and put his hand on the little guy's shoulder. "Don't be afraid of Grandpa and Grandma's anger. If you don't want to stay here, we will send you back to Kingstown now. When Grandpa and Grandma retire, we will go to Kingstown to live for a while. At that time we can be together again." When Li Jianxian heard this, the light in his eyes that had dimmed slowly began to light up again. A pair of dark and bright eyes just like Li Xiqing's. At that moment he looked at Rong Haiyue and then at Rong Xian and said, "Grandpa, Grandma, I don't want to go back to Kingstown." "Really?" If he went back to Kingstown, what about the room that Grandpa and Grandma had arranged for him? They had spent so much effort to decorate the room, and it was all based on his preferences. In the past few days he had really liked it. It was just that, maybe he was used to living in Kingstown and was not used to suddenly coming to the capital. And Ursu Mosen. But Grandpa and Grandma had no company. Both Ursu and Mosen had. Not only did they have family, but they also had children in the same villa to play with. They were not alone, not lonely. But Grandpa and Grandma couldn't. They were old and they needed someone to accompany them. Li Xiqing said that this was what the Li family owed them. The child of the Rong family, Rong Anna, was dead. It was all because of them. Otherwise Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue would have a child. Although Li Jianxian was young, he also knew the principle of a son paying his father's debts. A pair of eyes looked at Rong Xian and said, "Grandma, I think life in the capital is very good. I may have just arrived and I am not used to it, but I think Grandma's cooking is very delicious. I like it very much." Rong Xian looked at the 5-year-old child and reached out to touch his little head. "Really? Don't lie to Grandma." "I won't." Li Jianxian looked at Rong Xian and smiled. Great-grandfather said that people live in this world but only for a few decades, must not be wronged. Hearing such mischievous words, Rong Xian chuckled and rubbed his head. "Your great-grandfather is right. If you ever feel uncomfortable at grandmother's house, you can tell us at any time. Grandfather and I will send you back." "En?" Li Jianxian mimicked Li Jianyue's and laughed. With a carefree expression he said, "Don't worry. I'll definitely tell you." Rong Haiyue also chuckled. When he was about to say something, the phone at home rang. He picked up the phone. It was the Li family of Kingstown. "Jianxian, it's Grandma. Come and answer the phone." Rong Haiyue waved his hand and soon Li Jianxian walked over, picked up the phone and called out, "Grandma." Hearing her obedient grandson's voice, Qin Shuhua's reluctance to part with him was aroused again. "Desu, how are you doing in the capital?" Chapter 1576. Qin Shuhua was even more reluctant to part with her grandson when she heard how sensible he was. Holding the phone, her eyes felt a little warm as she said, "Then you have to study hard. Grandma is waiting for you." Li Jianxian was very sensible. But it was also because of this that Qin Shuhua felt a little distant from this child. This child was not like a child at all. After exchanging a few more pleasantries with the child, Qin Shuhua hung up the phone. Li Jianyue and Li Mosen had both returned to Wuxia. After Qin Shuhua hung up the phone, she felt bored. She loosened her muscles and walked around. When she walked into the backyard, Captain Li was in the gazebo. Looking from afar, the figure that was originally as straight as a javelin had unknowingly become a little stooped. His thick hair had all turned white, and his face was covered with layers of wrinkles. As he got older, his originally majestic back view was covered with the vicissitudes of time. As if sensing Qin Shuhua's arrival, Li Sun looked up. A pair of old eyes were covered with a layer of white haze. They were turbid yet filled with wisdom that was hard to comprehend. Seeing Qin Shuhua, Li Sun chuckled and waved at her. "Come here." Decades had passed, but when Qin Shuhua saw Li Sun, she always felt an indescribable sense of nervousness. This feeling had existed since she married Li Xiao until now. At that moment, when she saw Li Sun waving at her, Qin Shuhua unconsciously straightened her back and walked toward the gazebo. The stone table in the gazebo was covered with high-quality rice paper. On the table there was paper, brush, ink and ink. Captain Li's withered hand held a brush as the paper danced in the air. But it was obvious that the strength of the writing was far from what it used to be. "Dad, I remember that your handwriting is very good. Help me write a few words." Li Sun handed the brush to Qin Shuhua and said, "I'm old. I can't even write properly." "That's nonsense. It's very good." Qin Shuhua took the brush. "Who can write such good calligraphy nowadays?" Captain Li had written a sentence, "Strength to move mountains and unparalleled." But he only wrote 5 words. The word unparalleled was left blank. Qin Shuhua bent over and started writing. The old man looked at her brush through his muddy glasses and chuckled. "It's been hard on you all these years." Qin Shuhua stopped writing and looked up at Li Sun. The old man didn't seem to notice that she was looking at him. His eyes didn't move away. He said, "Li Xiao doesn't like to manage things. He thinks it's troublesome. He needs someone to worry about everything. Although you are a woman, there are many things in the family that you can make the right decisions." The old master said earnestly, "The children have all grown up and have their own families. I was originally most worried about Bei Xing, but I didn't expect that Bei Xing would already have a family. Next up would be Jinan." Captain Shen looked at Qin Shuhua. His eyes were filled with uncertainty, but he smiled faintly. "The children will have their own blessings. No matter what kind of girl Jinan finds as his elders, we shouldn't interfere too much. Jinan naturally has his own plans for who he chooses and who she is." "Dad?" Chapter 1577. "Nonsense. He'll definitely live to a ripe old age. There's still more than 20 years to go." Qin Shuhua's heart ached. She finished the last stroke and placed the brush back on the brush stand. Strength to pick up mountains, presence to conquer the world. This was definitely the best way to describe the old master when he was young. But so many years had passed. Li Sun's name had become a legend. Now this legend was slowly aging and facing the brink of extinction. Old Captain Li laughed. "Life and death are decreed by fate. You don't have the final say." As he spoke, he clapped his hands and said, "Bring the children over. Now that Desu has gone to the capital, Ursu probably isn't used to it. Bring them over to play." "All right." The old man nodded and slowly walked back with the help of his walking stick. Qin Shuhua looked at old Captain Li's back for a long time before looking down at the piece of paper in front of her. Strength to pick up mountains, presence to conquer the world. The sound of handcuffs clanking against each other could be heard. 2 female prison guards dressed in black walked into the prison cell with a short-haired woman in each arm. The woman was about 6 feet tall. She had a well-built build and looked a little tanned. She looked strong and both her hands were cuffed. Even though there were 2 prison guards watching her, she continued to look around unscrupulously. She seemed to be chewing on something. She looked left and right as if searching for something. Many prisoners saw her, but none of them made a sound. No one was as frivolous as Yi Yuyu had been when she entered. Yi Yuyu stood in the crowd and laughed to herself when she saw the woman. Even the vicious criminals in the prison cells bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, before she could finish cursing in her heart, she seemed to feel a sharp gaze looking towards her. Yi Yuyu paused and looked at the short-haired woman. Their eyes met. The short-haired woman's eyes flashed with an almost imperceptible light. Imperceptibly, a wave of chill suddenly assaulted them. Yi Yuyu's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, she hid behind the crowd. "Go in. Behave yourself." The prison guard pushed the short-haired woman in. Her tone was harsh. The short-haired woman stumbled when she was pushed. She was in the cell in an instant, but she quickly steadied herself. Then there was the sound of the iron door being slammed. Standing up straight, the short-haired woman straightened her clothes and smiled a bit sloppily. He licked the inner wall of his mouth, his tongue pushing against his cheeks. He swept his gaze across the crowd and didn't see the slightest bit of fear and awkwardness of a prisoner. "Hey old Joe, you're here again." Hearing the familiar voice, Yi Yuyu looked over. The person who spoke was called Wang Zhuang. She had a certain status in the prison and many people were afraid of her. Not only because of her burly figure, but also because of her fiery personality. Moreover, the scariest thing was that she was quite skilled. Once they appeared, they would definitely be able to call for backup. It was Yi Yu's second day in prison. She wasn't familiar with the inmates at all. However, she did not dare to approach any of the people inside. When old Zhou heard Wang Zhuang's shout, he turned his head to look. Old Zhou smiled and said, "Why haven't you left yet? I've been gone for 2 months. Bad luck. It was delayed." Wang Zhuang laughed out loud. "What did you do this time?" "Hey, don't talk about it," old Zhou said. "I was just stabbed by AB***. It could have been settled with some money, but they had to drag me in." "Hey," as old Zhou spoke, her eyes searched the crowd. Chapter 1578. Lao Zhou's gaze drifted over. When she saw Yi Yu, she seemed to smile. She quickly shifted her gaze to Wang Zhuang and asked, "Do you have any cigarettes?" Wang Zhuang laughed coldly and waved her hand. The person behind her immediately walked over and took out a pack of cigarettes. However, Elder Zhou wasn't polite at all. He lowered his eyes and took a look. Then he snatched the entire pack of cigarettes. The girl behind Wang Zhuang was a little confused and looked at Wang Zhuang instinctively. When Wang Zhuang saw her expression, she sneered and said, "Look at you. Can't Sister Zhou take a pack of cigarettes?" The girl immediately lowered her head and said, "I wouldn't dare." Wang Zhuang patted the girl's arm and said, "From now on, call me Sister Zhou. With Sister Zhou's protection, you'll have a good life." Lao Zhou lit up a cigarette and grinned. Holding the cigarette between her fingers, Lao Zhou blew out a ring of smoke and said, "Don't stand on ceremony. In the future, remember to bring out all the good food, fun things, and easy things to bully. I've acknowledged you as my sister." Wang Zhuang was very happy and replied, "Of course. Based on our current relationship, there's no need for such formalities. However, I found a particularly fun woman the past few days." "What does she look like?" "She's a prostitute. She was caught in the labor camp during the anti-prostitution crackdown. She has a big ass and big breasts, a oval face and fair skin. She's a high-class chicken." Wang Zhuang lit a cigarette and smiled with desire. She gestured to the person beside her and said, "Go catch that chicken and let Sister Zhou take a look." Lao Zhou's interest was clearly piqued. Her gaze swept across the crowd. Such a conversation made one's hair stand on end. Lao Zhou and Wang Zhuang were both strong-looking women. Their hair had been shaved to a buzz cut. Their bodies were flat and they looked fierce. If not for the fact that they were in a women's prison, it would have been difficult to associate them with the word woman. Many people had already begun to avoid them. Yi Yu turned around and walked to a corner. Soon, the high-class chicken that Wang Zhuang had mentioned was caught. She seemed to have been caught out of the blue and looked a little scared. When she saw that it was Wang Zhuang, she forced a smile and said, "Wang? Sister Wang, why are you looking for me?" Yi Yu looked at her and realized that her figure was indeed very good. She was tall and curvaceous. Her face looked very delicate, but her facial features were a little stiff. One look was enough to tell that her face had undergone surgery. At this moment, when he smiled with much difficulty, he actually couldn't be considered good-looking. However, Lao Zhou's gaze stopped on her large breasts. He said, "Not bad indeed. Come here and let me touch them." The woman was a little reluctant, but under Wang Zhuang's threatening gaze, she braced herself and walked up. Lao Zhou's hand was not courteous at all. He reached under her collar and grabbed it forcefully. However, this action caused him to frown deeply. She immediately retracted her hand and gave him a backhand slap. The woman whose breasts were grabbed was stunned and took a few steps back. Old Zhou spat and said, "I'm not here to play with saltwater bags." The woman covered her face contorted in anger. However, he didn't dare to say anything and shrank to the side. "I don't like this kind of trash. But, are there any pregnant women here recently? I've never played with a pregnant woman in my 30s. I recommend my gay friend Hua Rong's new book, The Most Spoiled Marriage of the Century, The Deep Kiss of the Husband. How does it feel to have sex with your own uncle? Not a good feeling." Chapter 1579. Pregnant Woman? The smile on Wang Zhuang's face froze. It's one thing for him to be naughty outside, but now that he's in prison he still wants to play with a pregnant woman? Isn't that a little too hardcore? What's so fun about pregnant women? In this prison they can't eat well or sleep well. Their complexions are all terrible. They're ugly to look at. They're worse than this. One of Wang Zhuang's subordinates spoke with a nonchalant expression. When Lao Zhou heard that, she turned her head and glanced at her. Her gaze was different from the ferocious look that Wang Zhuang had after spending so much time in prison. Instead, it was a kind of viciousness and hostility that she had never seen before. The person who spoke subconsciously took a step back, a little afraid. Lao Zhou didn't say anything when she saw that. She looked back at Wang Zhuang and asked, "Is there one?" "Yes, but it's already pitiful enough that the mother is locked up here." "You, pitiful?" Lao Zhou acted as if she had heard a joke and said, "Which one of the people locked up here hasn't done something wrong?" Wang Zhuang still couldn't bear it. "But, what are you pretending for? Who doesn't know that you've killed a few chickens before? Are you trying to show mercy now?" Lao Zhou's words were very direct. Wang Zhuang's expression darkened, but he still waved his hand and ordered his subordinates to look for her. In this prison, other than the warden, Wang Zhuang was the boss. It was obvious that Wang Zhuang respected Lao Zhou very much. Or perhaps it was fear. Yu wasn't the only one who could tell. Everyone else could as well. There weren't many pregnant women in the prison. There were more than 100 prisoners in the prison, but only 1 or 2 of them were pregnant. One of the subordinates brought over a pregnant woman who looked to be 7 or 8 months pregnant. It was obvious that the woman didn't know what was going on. She looked at Wang Zhuang with fear and respect in her eyes as she asked, "Sister Wang, what's the matter?" Wang Zhuang didn't dare look at her and replied, "This is Sister Zhou." "Greetings, Sister Zhou." The pregnant woman looked at Lao Zhou and smiled as she greeted, "Hello, Sister Zhou." Lao Zhou flicked the ash from her cigarette. Her face was filled with satisfaction as she looked at her belly. The pregnant woman felt a chill run down her spine when she was stared at like that. She subconsciously reached out and touched her belly. "Your belly button is protruding. Are you going to give birth?" The pregnant woman smiled. "Not yet. I still have about 2 more months." "Oh." Old Zhou's smile deepened. "That's good." The pregnant woman was stunned, not understanding what was going on. "Come with me, I'll give you a gift." When the pregnant woman heard this, she immediately waved her hand. "It's okay, Sister Zhou. You're too polite. You're welcome. We'll be family from now on." Zhou turned around and grabbed the pregnant lady's hand. "You'll like it." The pregnant woman felt uneasy, but she didn't dare to resist and followed them in. Yu was at the back of the crowd. As she listened, she felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know why, but she seemed to feel that old Zhou was watching her. It was as if she had come specifically to find him. Moreover, the moment he came in, he asked for the pregnant woman by name and his gaze kept lingering on her. This really made people think more about it. Yuyu's heart had been hanging by a thread from the very beginning. This kind of uncertain hidden danger was very uncomfortable. Chapter 1580. The crowd quickly dispersed. Yuyu didn't dare to speak to anyone. There were naturally people like her in prison. People who had been wrongly convicted or wrongly accused. But such people were in the minority. Yuyu didn't dare to take the risk. So far, only she and the prison guards knew about her pregnancy. If this was known by the people inside, wouldn't she also end up being toyed with? Yuyu lay in bed feeling very uneasy. She closed her eyes and couldn't fall asleep. Suddenly she heard footsteps and the sound of sobbing. From the sound, it was the pregnant woman. Yuyu gripped the thin blanket tightly. She broke out in a cold sweat. "They're back. Lower your voice. Do you want to wake them up?" It was the voice of one of Wang Zhuang's subordinates. It sounded vicious. Yuyu knew that there weren't many people asleep at the moment. But no one dared to speak. It was eerily quiet. The pregnant woman held it in and didn't dare to make another sound. She turned around and walked to her bed. She carefully sat down. The pregnant woman's bed was opposite Yuyu's. She could clearly hear the commotion from above. Without a doubt, she was being bullied. Yuyu's heart raced. She was terrified. She gripped the blanket tightly. She felt extremely wronged. There weren't many good people in prison. There were many people like Wang Zhuang and Lao Zhou. With a personality like hers, she would only be bullied in a place like this. She didn't have to go through all of this. The more she thought about it, the more wronged she felt. Yuyu's eyes burned. She gripped the blanket tightly and closed her eyes. "Li Jin, and come and save me. Do you want to continue staying here? Make me happy." The high and mighty voice was tinged with a morbid desire to conquer. In the darkness, the figure was like the projection of the devil. He smiled. But to Shen Manting, that smile was no different from a nightmare. Shen Manting looked at the figure and retreated in a panic. However, no matter how she fled, no matter how far she went, that figure seemed to be a curse, forever following her from afar, relentlessly pursuing her. "Do you think you can run away?" His deep, husky, magnetic voice was like a death-reaping symphony. Without any room to hide, he suddenly attacked her. Shen Manting felt as if she had been pushed into a bottomless abyss. Suddenly her body trembled. The night was short. Shen Manting lay on the bed, sweating profusely. Looking at the decaying ceiling above his head, he panted heavily, his chest heaving up and down. His back was drenched. In the August weather, the electric fan in the room swayed from side to side. The wind was not strong, but as the fan shook, it slowly swept over her body. She shuddered. He sat up. Everything around him that he had been familiar with for a long time was real. Not that mansion and not the room he used to pamper her. There was no Shen Luo, and no Shen family and no pain. However, Shen Manting's heart was so empty that she felt like she was about to suffocate. He reached out and placed his hand on his chest. Beads of water dripped from Shen Manting's forehead onto her arm. He got up and poured himself a glass of water. She slowly finished her drink and looked out of the window. The night in the small town was exceptionally quiet. Other than the chirping of insects, there was also the barking of dogs in the distance. There won't be Shen Luo, and Shen Manting muttered to herself as she caressed her lower abdomen. Chapter 1581. The alarm bell rang and the entire room shook. Yu opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was the red eyes of a pregnant woman on the bed opposite her. When the pregnant woman saw Yu, she smiled as a form of greeting. However, that smile seemed forced no matter how one looked at it. Yu took a look and returned the smile. However, just as he sat up, his stomach began to churn. Yuyu's expression changed. She covered her mouth and didn't even bother to put on her shoes. She quickly ran to the bathroom and vomited into the toilet. Such a situation immediately attracted the attention of many people. Is she pregnant? Someone asked. When Yu heard that, her heart began to race. She looked to her left and right before wiping her mouth and standing up. As she was doing her morning exercises, many people looked over. Yuyu's heart was filled with anxiety. She had endured the entire morning with much difficulty. However, what was bound to happen would eventually happen. Just as she was about to go to bed for her afternoon nap, someone suddenly put a bag over her head and dragged her to the back. By the time the bag was removed, her surroundings had changed drastically. Lao Zhou and Wang Zhuang had cigarettes in their hands. They led their men over to her. Their expressions were unfriendly. Lao Zhou waved her hand behind her. Wang Zhuang and the others instinctively stepped back to make way. Lao Zhou put out her cigarette and walked over to Yu. Yu was a little afraid. She stepped back and asked, What? What are you trying to do? What can I do? I'm not a man. Lao Zhou laughed. She looked at her stomach and said, You're pregnant, but your stomach is still so small. You're Yu, aren't you? Yuyu's heart skipped a beat. She moved to the side. You're the Yu who killed Guan Kui, aren't you? Lao Zhou laughed coldly. You're quite pretty. I heard that at such a young age, you already knew how to seduce your own sister's fiancé. Yu stared at her warily and asked, What are you trying to do? No, I'm just wondering if you're the one who seduced my brother-in-law, or the one you think is your fiancé. Old Zhou stepped forward and sneered, She is indeed beautiful. As expected, men will flock to beautiful women. Your fiancé is running errands for you outside. Just looking at him is tiring. If I had such a man, would I still need to play around with women? Yu was forced into a corner. There was no way out. Yuyu's heart raced as she stared at Lao Zhou. I heard that it's fun to play with pregnant women. Yesterday's belly was too big, but your belly is small. Even if you bleed, people will only think that you accidentally miscarried. They won't suspect me, right? That's right. Yu bit her lip and clenched her fists tightly as she looked at her. Lao Zhou reached out to grab Yu. Yu couldn't stand it anymore. She screamed, Help! Li Jinan, save me. Lao Zhou was taken aback by the sudden scream. She laughed mockingly and said, Are all women as naive as you? If your screams are of any use, then this lackey of yours is really just a decoration. The lackey you're talking about is Wang Zhuang? Yu asked as she looked at her. Of course. Could it be you? Lao Zhou laughed coldly and reached out to grab Yuyu's shoulder. Before she could do so, another hand grabbed her. Chapter 1582. That voice. It was Wang Zhuang. Lao Zhou turned around and saw Wang Zhuang grabbing her arm. Seeing that it was her, Lao Zhou frowned. She looked very unhappy. What are you doing? I should be the one asking you that, Wang Zhuang said. What do you want to do to her? You know she's pregnant. With such a small belly she could easily miscarry. When Zhou heard that, it was as if he had heard a joke. He said, When did you become so kind? She's just a pregnant woman. For her to be locked up here, even the prison guards probably don't know that she's pregnant. I just accidentally messed with her. She's pregnant. What does that have to do with me? Wang Zhuang frowned. She looked very disapproving. You want to miscarry her? Sure. Lao Zhou smiled slyly. It's good that you know. You don't have to say that out loud. Go stand guard outside. After I'm done with this, I won't have to worry about food and clothing. When you get out, you can come to me anytime. Wang Zhuang laughed coldly. Unfortunately, I can't do something like that. I have a recording pen with me at all times. As she spoke, Wang Zhuang tightened her grip on Lao Zhou's arm. Lao Zhou had not expected Wang Zhuang to say something like that. She was stunned. What do you mean? Wang Zhuang took out a recording pen from the back of her pants. You weren't such a beast before. How did you become like this? Lao Zhou looked at the pen and her expression darkened. She reached out and tried to snatch the pen away. But Wang Zhuang was already prepared. I want to get out. Whether I can get a lighter sentence depends on you, Sister Zhou. Lao Zhou felt that something was wrong. She immediately asked, What do you mean? Just as she said that, they heard a series of orderly footsteps coming from outside. 4 or 5 police officers walked over with guns in both hands. The black muzzles were pointed at them. More specifically, they were pointed at Lao Zhou. Wang Zhuang raised her hands and passed the recording pen to one of the police officers. Sir, I've recorded her intentions. You can listen to it later. It'll be useful. The police officer took it, but he didn't relax. With a wave of his hand, someone immediately came forward to handcuff Wang Zhuang. Lao Zhou was surrounded. She couldn't muster up any resistance. She glared at Wang Zhuang in anger and yelled, You betrayed me. I'm just doing my job. Lao Zhou was even angrier. She was quickly taken away. Yi Yu was curled up in a corner. Wang Zhuang and Lao Zhou were handcuffed. After they were taken away, Yi Yu breathed a sigh of relief. The police officer took the recording pen and looked at it. Zhou, he said. Yi Yu shook her head. Was still in shock. Subconsciously, he reached out and caressed his currently flat belly. The police officer had clearly noticed Yi Yu's actions. His tone softened as he said, Thank you for your hard work. Mr. Li has been waiting for you for a long time. You can come out now. Was. Ji. Zhou, S. Chapter 1583. Yi Yu finally understood what was going on. Her heart leaped with joy. She quickly followed the police officer out. The police officer was very kind. He even allowed Yi Yu to remove her handcuffs and change into a fresh set of clothes. After tidying up her appearance, he brought her out to meet Li Jinnan. Yi Yu wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but at first glance, Li Jinnan seemed to have lost some weight. There were 2 distinct dark circles under his eyes. It was heartbreaking to look at him. When Yi Yu approached, she subconsciously lightened her steps and looked at Li Jinnan. A smile broke out on Li Jinnan's face. He quickly walked toward her. He opened his arms and pulled her into his embrace. Such an embrace was very real. Yi Yu almost thought it was an illusion. She reached out and pressed on his chest a few times before she could confirm that it was real. She looked up and saw Li Jinnan's chiseled face. His already sharp lines had become even more defined under the continuous exhaustion. Yi Yu's eyes heated up. Her breathing became heavy as she hugged him. She said, Something almost happened to me just now. Someone tried to abort my child. Li Jinnan hugged her tightly, his heart aching for her. He gently kissed her on the forehead and gently said, It's fine now. The person has already been arrested and is being interrogated. The results will be out soon. He was probably sent by Guan Yanhong. Yi Yu felt even more aggrieved. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pitifully asked, Why did he do this to me? I've never wronged him. Whether it was Guan Kui's handicap or her death, it wasn't because of me. Perhaps he misunderstood you. It's fine now. Don't be afraid. Li Jinnan's heart ached. Yi Yu's figure appeared especially petite in front of him. It was as if Li Jinnan only needed to use a little more strength to cut her up. Especially in the past few days, Yi Yu had lost at least 5 pounds. Her face, which didn't have much flesh to begin with, was now a little sunken. Yi Yu leaned into his embrace and looked around. In a small voice she asked, Why did they send someone to watch me now? And why did they leave me here? Aren't they afraid that I'll run away? When Li Jinnan heard that, he couldn't help but laugh. Silly girl, didn't you know that you were released from prison? Yi Yu was stunned when she heard that. She found it hard to believe. She looked up at him and asked, Why? She was now a murderer in the eyes of the people outside. A murderer could be released from prison? No, that's impossible. Is it because I'm pregnant? So, even if I kill someone, I won't have to go to jail? Yu asked with uncertainty. But as soon as she said this, she immediately frowned and said, but that doesn't make sense. Even if I'm pregnant, I won't be sentenced to death for murder. At least I'll be in jail. Why did I get out of jail? Did you do something? Li Jinan shook his head. He looked at her and softly said, because the murderer is someone else. Yu's eyes widened. Is the murderer someone else? Oh, it's not Guan Kui? The truth should be that Guan Kui committed suicide, but it's hard to prove that. Li Jinan hugged Yu and said, but if the murderer was someone else, it would be easy to explain. Chapter 1584. No, Li Jinan denied. Li Jinan denied it. He looked deeply into Yu's eyes. Is Guan Kui not dead? Yu asked again. However, such a thing should not have happened. Li Jinan thought about it for a moment before replying, it's Shen Luo Han. He confessed. Yu was shocked. He confessed? Guan Kui was killed by him? Li Jinan didn't speak. He stared at her. His chiseled features didn't waver in the slightest. His gaze was deep and pitch black. Indescribable emotions quietly spread in all directions. When Yu saw him like that, she seemed to have guessed something. Could it be that Shen Luo and suddenly confessed because of me? But another voice immediately spoke up in her heart. Impossible. Shen Luo and might not have loved Guan Kui, but he had always hated her. How could he bear a crime that he didn't need to bear for her sake? If he were to bear such a crime, he would be sentenced to life imprisonment at the very least. Shen Luo and was in his prime. He had a bright future ahead of him. If he were to go to jail at this time, regardless of whether it was true or not, it would be destroying his own future. Furthermore, how could Shen Luo and have killed Guan Kui? After so many years, his guilt toward Guan Kui had seeped deep into his bones. How could he have killed her? That wasn't realistic. Could it really be because of me? When Yu thought of that, she suddenly found it funny. How could it be? But all the evidence pointed to her. If Shen Luo and hadn't stepped forward, no one would have suspected him. Could it be that he had turned himself in because of his guilt toward me? Yu couldn't figure it out. She looked up at Li Jinan and asked, is he locked up? Yeah. Li Jinan pulled her into his arms and said, he's temporarily in custody, but Guan Yanhong's side is finding it hard to believe. They are certain that you killed Guan Kui. They are currently providing evidence to prove that Shen Luo and is innocent and that you were the mastermind. In other words, I'm still a suspect? Yu looked at Li Jinan. She didn't know whether to rejoice or feel sad. Li Jinan gently stroked her hair with his warm palm and said, yeah. But considering that you're pregnant, I'll let you out of prison first. Consider it a temporary release. She gazed at his chest and said, I want to see him. Yu mumbled in a low voice. She wanted to see him, she wanted to see him. After the divorce, Yu had never felt such a strong desire to see him. This feeling was surging and uncontrollable. She looked up and met Li Jinan's eyes. Li Jinan stared at him for a moment before replying, okay. I'll ask you again. Did you kill Guan Kui? Once the truth is confirmed, you may be sentenced to death. During the interrogation, the policeman looked at Shen Luo and with a serious expression. Shen Luo and was chained to the prisoner's chair. He was dressed in a criminal's outfit, which made his originally frail and weak look even more pathetic. In the face of such interrogation, Shen Luo and looked a little tired. He said again, I'm sure that I killed her. I didn't want to marry her, so I chose to murder her. I used my latest chemical poison and put it in her cup. Then I pretended to run away from the wedding. In this way I could clear my name. Chapter 1585. What? Shen Luo and paused. With a mocking smile, he said, because I don't want an innocent person to be wrongly accused. The policeman frowned deeply. Shen Luo An's words were flawless. His words had connected many of the details of the incident. It was very convincing. However, his posture didn't look like that of a criminal at all. He was so calm that he seemed to be admitting his guilt on purpose. It was hard to not be suspicious. Do you think that Yu was wrongly accused? Shen Luo and smiled. His pale face looked even calmer. He asked, isn't that the case? Did she admit her guilt? Indeed she didn't, but who would admit their guilt after a murder? Am I not? Shen Luo and smiled and looked at him. You guys are really strange. You've been suspecting a girl all this time. When the real murderer comes to you and admits her guilt, you don't believe her. Based on the way you handle cases, I wonder how many people are wrongly accused and imprisoned. I wonder how many murderers are still at large. Shinluo, Anne's words weren't polite at all. The policemen looked at each other in displeasure. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door behind them. The people inside looked in the direction of the sound. It was a policeman. He said, "Someone wants to visit the prisoner. Get ready." Visit the prisoner? Shinluo, and leaned back in his chair and said lazily, "I'm not willing to see just anyone. The people who are here are Yi Yuyu and Li Jinan. If you don't want to see them, I'll ask them to go back," the policeman said. The man in front of Shinluo, and closed his notebook and stood up. Shinluo, Anne's expression froze. His smile faded a little as he said, "I will." The lighting wasn't good and the atmosphere was a little dark. Soft voices came from outside, accompanied by light and heavy footsteps. Every sound seemed to be Yi Yuyu's voice. Shinluo, Anne's heart beat inexplicably faster. He was actually a little nervous. The thought of seeing Yi Yuyu and Li Jinan snuggling up to each other didn't sit well with each other. All of a sudden he had the urge to retreat. Shinluo, and looked up and said, "I don't want to see them. Chase them away." But it was too late. Li Jinan and Yi Yuyu had already walked in. When Yi Yuyu heard that, she stopped in her tracks. Li Jinan gave her a gentle push and said, "It's too late." After closing the door, Li Jinan and Yi Yuyu sat across from Shinluo on. She had known him for more than a decade and had seen him in many different ways. In the past, Shinluo, and had always been high and mighty. She had grown up surrounded by praises since she was young, and her attitude was high and mighty. However, she had never thought that she would see him in a prisoner's uniform. Yi Yuyu felt a pang in her heart. She suddenly felt that things had remained the same but the people had changed. The glory of the past was gone. Shinluo, and took in her expression and felt a little guilty for some reason. For a moment, he was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in to avoid her gaze. However, at that moment Yi Yuyu was right in front of him. He had already missed the best opportunity to escape. He had no choice but to raise his head to look at her. Forcing himself to remain calm, he smiled and said, "You're out. Look at you, you've lost weight." Yi Yuyu's chest convulsed as tears welled up in her eyes. Chapter 1586. Back then she had been young. She had followed Shinluo, and like a little wife. Everyone had thought that they would be together forever. However, time had passed. In just a few short years, everything had changed. Yi Yuyu held back her tears and looked at Shinluo, and without saying a word. When Shinluo, and faced Yi Yuyu like this, he felt a sense of shame that came from the bottom of his heart and soul. It shouldn't be like this. He shouldn't be like this in front of her. His throat felt bitter. He wanted to say something but his throat was so sore that he couldn't utter a single word. "Why?" Yi Yuyu's voice was extremely soft. It reverberated in the empty room. Shinluo, and met her gaze and chuckled. "Why what? Why are you taking the blame for me?" Yi Yuyu's beautiful eyes reddened. "You weren't the one who did it. Don't be silly. If I hadn't killed her, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. How can you still be so naive?" Shinluo, Anne's nonchalant expression made Yi Yuyu feel even more guilty. She looked at him and choked out, "Guan Kui committed suicide. It has nothing to do with anyone else." "You think that Guan Kui committed suicide but others don't think so." Shinluo, and looked at her with an indescribable gentleness. "If you don't give an explanation, Guan Yanhong won't let you off. No, the matter can be investigated. Why are you the one in jail?" "Be good. Stop it." Shinluo, and looked helpless as he said, "You're pregnant. Don't cry." When Yi Yuyu heard that tone of voice that she hadn't heard in a long time, she couldn't hold it in any longer. She covered her face and burst into tears. Li Jinan was right beside her. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. A pair of sharp, dark eyes stared straight at Shinluo. In between there was only coldness. Shinluo, and could clearly sense his hostility and unfriendliness. He smiled bitterly as he looked at the arm holding Yi Yuyu. His heart was filled with complicated emotions. It shouldn't have happened. This girl had once been the most precious treasure in his heart. Back then, under the starry sky, they had laid on the lawn, and they had promised each other for the rest of their lives. However, in a group of three there was bound to be a loser. He had failed Yi Yuyu and Guan Kui. This shouldn't have happened. Yi Yuyu didn't know how Shinluo and felt. She lay in Li Jinan's arms, full of indignation. Choking with sobs, she said, "This isn't fair. This has nothing to do with us. Why are we being made to bear the consequences? Guan Kui is mentally ill. Even if she did something extreme, it would be within reason. Why are we being made to bear the consequences? Should kind people be bullied like this? She didn't want him to go to jail. Even though they had all sorts of misunderstandings over the years. Even though they had a lot of unhappiness in the past. However, he was still Shinluo. For Yu, no matter what, he would always be the brother Luo, and who loved and cared for her. Even though she had cursed him at the worst time, pointing at the heavens to make him suffer retribution. When the retribution came, Yu found it hard to accept. When Shinluo heard that, the faint smile on his face turned bitter. He said, "You're the kind one, Yu. I'm a scum." Chapter 1587. He's a scumbag. Shinluo knew that. That scumbag is a hopeless bastard. Yu was a good person, but he had ruined her first marriage. If it weren't for him, Yu wouldn't have needed to leave such a stain on her life. If it weren't for him, Guan Kui wouldn't have done such an extreme thing. First, she had jumped off a cliff to frame him. After years of insanity, she had committed suicide on her wedding day. She had left behind a series of inexplicable and incriminating evidence that had trapped the innocent Yu. If it weren't for that scumbag, Shin Manting would be living happily at home. She would be carefree and wouldn't leave. She would find a good man to marry, but it didn't have to be O Ming. Just as Shin Manting had said, handsome, gentle, considerate, and rich. For the rest of her life, she would have her own children and a family of her own. She would be happy for the rest of her life. Now she had been forced into hiding by him. It would be difficult to find her. For someone like me, I deserve to go to jail. Shinluo looked at Yu. His bitter smile widened as he said, "I've let you down and I've let Guan Kui down." As he spoke, his throat was choked with sobs. Shinluo's vision blurred. He lowered his head and said, "Just take it as me atoning for my sins, Yu." Despite his unwillingness, Shinluo couldn't think of any other way to ease the guilt in his heart. That was a stupid and practical path. Only when one's freedom was restricted would one know regret. "This is my own choice, Yu. Don't cry." However, Yu started to cry even harder. Lying in Li Jinan's arms, she was on the verge of breaking down. It shouldn't have been like this. Regardless of whether it was her or Shinluo, it shouldn't have been like this. Guan Kui was dead, but she had harmed those who were still alive. Li Jinan hugged her tightly without saying a word and wiped away her tears. Her gaze fell on Shinluo. When she saw his slightly moist eyes, an indescribable emotion welled up inside her. Shinluo still loved Yu. The sense of crisis in his heart grew. Instinctively, he tightened his arms around her. Yu hugged him tightly as well, which made Li Jinan feel a little more at ease. She still depended on him even though she was crying for another man now. But in her heart, she still only acknowledged him as her man, right? Li Jinan looked down at Shinluo with a hint of hope in his eyes. You could call him selfish or cold-blooded. At this moment he actually felt a little lucky. She was glad that Shinluo still loved Yu. She was glad that Shinluo knew how to atone for his sins. Otherwise the person sitting there right now would be Yu. "I will get you out," Yu said in a choked voice. Her tone was very determined. "I believe that justice is in everyone's heart. You didn't do these things. Heaven will return justice to you." Shinluo was originally sad, but he was suddenly amused by her words. Her tone was just like the chicken soup she used to feed him when he was young. Looking at her, Shinluo smiled and nodded. His eyes curved into crescents as he said, "Yes." Guan Yanhong had not expected Shinluo to suddenly jump out. Chapter 1588. Guan Yanhong was having breakfast when the doorbell rang. The servant went forward to open the door and was greeted by an arrest warrant. Guan Yanhong looked at the police officers in front of him. His expression was natural as he calmly ate his breakfast. Faced with the questioning of the police officers, his expression was calm as he replied, "What, Zhou Yingxin? I don't know him." "I don't care if you know him or not, but you're coming with us right now. Take him away." Guan Yanhong laughed coldly. He put down his chopsticks and said, "Is this how you treat the family of the deceased? You were the ones who investigated my daughter's death. Now you haven't even given me an explanation and you want to throw me in jail as well? Did that *Yu bribe you in some way? Is that why you're here to deal with me?" When the policeman heard this, his face, which was not smiling at all, became even more sullen. Looking at Guan Yanhong, none of them were in a good mood. "Take him away." By the time Guan Yanhong was handcuffed and taken to the police station, it was already more than an hour later. Li Jinan and Yi Yuyu emerged from the police station at the same time and bumped into Guan Yanhong. When Guan Yanhong saw Yi Yuyu, his expression darkened. He yelled, "B***tc." Yi Yuyu looked at Guan Yanhong with a cold expression. When Guan Yanhong saw the look on Yi Yuyu's face, his anger flared. He rushed forward and prepared to strike. The police officers who had reached out were quick and quickly restrained him. "B***tc. B***tc. Return my daughter to me." Guan Yanhong's face was red. He writhed and struggled violently as he glared at Yi Yuyu. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked vicious. Yi Yuyu leaned against Li Jinan's side and hugged his hand. When she saw Guan Yanhong's attitude, there was pity in her eyes. At the same time there was hatred. It was this man who had harmed her. Because of this man, her home was no longer her home. Her mother was no longer her mother. Years ago, this man had magnified the crime that Guan Kui had placed on her and spread it around, causing her to suffer so many grievances. Now, he wanted her to bear the responsibility for Guan Kui's death. How could it be so easy? Yi Yuyu hugged Li Jinan's arm tightly. Her jaw tightened as she said, "You'll pay the price." When Guan Yanhong heard that, he looked as if he had just heard a joke. "Me? You want me to pay?" As he spoke, his body twisted even more violently. "What did my daughter do wrong? You killed my daughter and now you're threatening me with such words. Do you really think that there's no one left in the Guan family? The last thing I, Guan Yanhong, regret doing in this life is getting you and your daughter involved. Bah. A lowly bastard is a lowly bastard that can't be shown in public. Watch your mouth, this is the police station." A police officer beside Guan Yanhong bellowed angrily and pushed him to the side of the table. Guan Yanhong had never suffered such humiliation before. He struggled but was firmly suppressed. He was so angry that he laughed instead. "What benefits did that bastard give you? I'll give you double. She was the one who killed my daughter. Why should she be released? She must pay the price. Shut him up. He's so noisy." Yes. After Guan Yanhong was taken away, the scene quieted down. Chapter 1589. Yi Yuyu had just come out, so she had no idea what he was talking about. She looked at Li Jinan with confusion. The latter looked at the police officer and nodded slightly. "Don't worry. We'll be on our way. Take care." After walking out of the police station, Yi Yuyu couldn't help but ask, "Did you promise them something?" When he heard that, he turned his head to look at Yi Yuyu and replied, "They said that if we are needed to testify or appear in the future, they hope that we can do so." "That's it?" "Yes." Li Jinan reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He placed his hand on her abdomen and said, "That's it. Are you tired?" The next second he changed the topic. Yi Yuyu had a feeling that things weren't as simple as they seemed. However, he really did not have the energy to continue interrogating. She leaned on his arm and narrowed her eyes as she replied, "I'm tired. I'll carry you." "No need. Did you drive here?" "Yes." Li Jinan hugged her and planted a gentle kiss on the side of her face. "We're almost there. I'll take you back to get some rest. Take a bath and then have a good sleep." "I don't want to shower." Yi Yuyu was exhausted. She closed her eyes and didn't want to open them. Being relied on like that, Li Jinan's heart, which had been hanging in the air for the past few days, suddenly felt as if the dust had settled. This feeling was comfortable. Finally, he didn't have to worry about her going to jail. He finally didn't have to worry about losing her. Li Jinan's heart warmed up. Lowering his head, Li Jinan captured her lips and took a deep breath. Yi Yuyu was shocked by his enthusiasm. She opened her eyes and looked at him in a daze. When Li Jinan saw that, the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. He gently said, "Be good. I'll carry you back." As he spoke, he had already picked her up. Yi Yuyu's heart skipped a beat. Like a sloth, she hugged Li Jinan securely. "What are you doing? You scared me." Yi Yuyu smacked him reproachfully and said in a sweet voice, "I already said I don't want you to hug me. Everyone is watching." Li Jinan looked around and realized that quite a few people were looking in their direction. So what? I've seen it. I've seen my own woman. What's wrong with that?" His blunt words caused Yi Yuyu's face to heat up. She retorted, "You really dare to say that? Why not?" Li Jinan strode toward his car. He leaned over and whispered, "I'll help you bathe when we get back. You sleep." "No, I don't want to wash." "You have to wash it," Li Jinan said softly. "I'll help you wash it. It doesn't matter if you wash it tomorrow or the day after, but you have to wash it today. Otherwise it will be inauspicious." "Inauspicious?" Yi Yuyu was a little surprised. there's a baleful aura in the prison. After you enter, the baleful aura will follow you. You can't wear the clothes you're wearing in the prison. Now that you've changed, you need to take a bath and cleanse yourself. Otherwise bad luck will follow you. She wrapped her arms around his neck and laughed mischievously. I didn't expect you to believe in such things. For this kind of thing, I'd rather believe it exists than not. Li Jinan walked steadily. Then you still dare to hug me? Aren't you afraid that my bad luck will come to you? Chapter 1590. Where do you get your confidence from? Yu couldn't help but retort. How do you know they won't like someone as tall and strong as you? Li Jinan was deep in thought. After a long while he said, even if they do, I already have a woman. I won't fall for them. What if they're prettier than me? Li Jinan was in a difficult position. He furrowed his brows and said, then I'll have to. When Yu saw that he was deep in thought, she grew angry. She punched him and asked, what are you trying to do? In that case I'll have to appear taller and stronger. If they can't stand it, they'll probably stop bothering me. Yu turned her head away and harumphed. She refused to look at him. Li Jinan chuckled. When he saw his car in the distance, he said, feel my pocket for the car keys. Yu continued to ignore him. She reached her hand into his trouser pocket. However, Li Jinan had greatly overestimated his self-control. When Yu's soft hand reached into his pocket and touched his thigh, it felt like an electric current was running through his body. Li Jinan's entire body trembled. He tightened his grip on her. An indescribable heat surged up. Li Jinan's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. His mouth went dry. Yu was oblivious. She picked up the car keys and held them in her hand. He used the remote control to open the car door and placed Yu in the passenger seat. He walked over to the driver's seat. He didn't even have time to fasten his seatbelt. He turned his head and looked at his woman. Li Jinan's gaze was too passionate. When Yu saw it, her hair stood on end. She stammered, What are you trying to do? However, Li Jinan had no intention of explaining himself at all. He leaned over slightly and encircled her in the passenger seat. With one hand holding her head, he lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. He couldn't help himself. Li Jinan wanted nothing more than to caress her right there and then to relieve the anxiety that had been building up over the past few days. However, rationality quickly stopped him. Li Jinan seemed to have used up all his strength. He suddenly released her and returned to his seat. Yu didn't have time to react. She had gone from passively accepting to passively letting go. She had been in a daze the entire time. She turned her head and saw that Li Jinan had already fastened his seatbelt. Then he reached his hand out to her. Yu widened her eyes and looked at him. Li Jinan's movements paused for a moment. Then, the line of his jaw tightened even more before he leaned forward. Just as she thought that he was going to do something else to her, he reached behind her and unbuckled her seatbelt. Li Jinan started the car with a light click. Their current location wasn't close to Li Jinan's current residence. Yu leaned against the back of the chair and drifted off to sleep. Li Jinan had originally been anxious to go back, but when he saw that she had fallen asleep, his eagerness to go back gradually faded. He reduced the speed of the car and made it more stable. After about 20 minutes, the car finally stopped. He parked the car in the courtyard and carefully carried Yu out. Yu was probably exhausted. Even after being carried, she didn't seem to have any intention of waking up. Li Jinan carried her and keyed in the passcode. Just as he was about to walk into the room. Chapter 1591. Li Jinan stopped in his tracks and lowered his head to look at the woman in his arms. Yuyu's eyes were closed. Her head was resting on his arm and tilted up slightly. Her red lips were slightly pursed, and her dark eyes were tightly shut. There wasn't the slightest bit of emotion. It was as if what she had said earlier had been nothing more than a dream. Li Jinan looked at her and the corners of his lips turned up slightly. He walked in and carried her into the room. Enunciating each word, he asked, "When do you want to marry me?" Yuyu's eyes opened a slit. There was an indescribable layer of mist in her bright eyes. Li Jinan placed her on the edge of the bed. He cupped her face and kissed her gently. "As long as you want me to, I'll do it anytime." Yuyu lowered her head slightly and softly said, "I'm pregnant." The smile on Li Jinan's face widened as he replied, "I know. You know. So, are you going to marry me or not? When are you going to marry me?" Yuyu was a little anxious, but she couldn't bring herself to say such a thing. Looking at the sparkling eyes of the man in front of her, Yu Yu didn't say anything. She gently pushed him away and said, I'm going to take a shower. Li Jinan didn't let her go. He pulled her into his arms and asked, and then? That's it? Yu Yu was annoyed. What do you mean by then? You already know that I'm pregnant. Shouldn't you at least express something? Express what? Li Jinan laughed. As if by magic he pulled out a ring from his pocket. It was the diamond ring that the two of them had bought together some time ago. When they were locked up, it had been confiscated by the police. When she saw the diamond ring, Yu Yu's eyes widened. She reached out her hand to take it. However, Li Jinan immediately dodged and held her hand. His almond-shaped eyes were smiling mischievously. His gaze was deep and dark as he said, Since you're already the mother of the child, you can be the third Mrs. Li in the future. I'll treat you well. When Yu Yu heard that, she became unwilling. She pushed him away and angrily said, Go to hell. I'm not. Then you'll be my third Mrs. Li in the future? Li Jinan leaned closer to her and whispered, You'll be my child's mother while you're at it. In other words, it was much more pleasing to the ear. When Yu Yu heard that, she couldn't help but smile. But when she met Li Jinan's gaze, she didn't want him to be complacent. She then pushed him away and said, Go away, I'm going to take a bath. I'll help you. Li Jinan held her hand and gently slid the diamond ring onto the ring finger of her left hand. The ring was still warm from his kiss. In an instant, it was as if a fire had been lit in Yu Yu's chest. It was scorching hot and uncontrollable. Yu Yu looked at the diamond ring. The smile on her face deepened. Li Jinan looked at her smiling face and couldn't help himself. He interlocked his fingers with hers and stretched them out to the sides. The tip of his nose touched the tip of her nose and his lips pressed against hers. He couldn't hold back his smile. She touched his hand lightly. He picked her up and said, Let's go. Yu Yu exclaimed and her smile widened. She wrapped her arms around his neck and locked her legs around him. He placed her in the dry bathtub and reached out to help her take off her clothes. Yu Yu pushed his hand away. Her face reddened as she said, I'll do it myself. Chapter 1592. No. That won't do. Yu Yu's face turned even redder. The child in my stomach is still small. You can't help me. Li Jinan laughed out loud and said, When I said I was going to take a bath, I meant it. What are you thinking? Yu Yu's face turned even redder when she heard that. She replied, You've said that every time. Did I say that before? Yes. Yu Yu complained. The last time you said you would help me put on my bra, but before I even put it on, you already started. How dare you say you didn't? Was it the same as this time? Li Jinan quibbled. Taking off my clothes is different from putting them on. Taking a bath is different from going on a date. Be good. I'll behave. Yu Yu was speechless. Although she still had some doubts, Yu Yu was too tired to move. She reached out her hand and let him do his work. Li Jinan was indeed very obedient. After helping her take off her top, he slowly helped her take off her pants. When only her underwear was left, his movements became even slower. Yu Yu leaned against the side of the bathtub and enjoyed the service with her eyes closed. When he didn't move for a long time, she opened her eyes. She realized that he was beside her. With a troubled expression, he said, I don't think we've turned on the water yet. Yu Yu burst out in laughter and replied, You just realized that? I thought you just wanted me to take a shower. That's fine. Li Jinan brought the shower head over and turned on the water to test the temperature. He turned his gaze to Yu Yu and couldn't take it anymore. He asked, Can you stand up for a moment? Yu Yu didn't want to move. Aren't you going to help me take a shower? That's right. Li Jinan couldn't go back on his words. Although he had the heart, his body couldn't take it anymore. His lower body was fuming, but Yu Yu was pregnant. He couldn't do anything to her at a time like this. The arrow was already knocked on the bow. No matter what, it had to be released. After thinking for a moment, Li Jinan handed the shower head to her. Take it. Yu Yu took it. Li Jinan's eyes burned as he stared at her ample bosom, which was squeezed by her bra. His cheeks began to burn. With a light cough, Li Jinan hugged her and reached behind her to unbutton her blouse. Almost at the same time, the snow-white face bounced out. Li Jinan couldn't take it anymore. He looked down and his body was swollen to the point of pain. Yu Yu could tell that he was uncomfortable. She chuckled and said, Weren't you the one who suggested it? Why are you dropping the ball now? As he spoke, he poured hot water on himself. Her originally snow-white and delicate skin became even whiter and more alluring as the water droplets rolled down her skin. How could Li Jinan let her down? He reached out and tugged at her underwear. But at this moment he couldn't take it anymore and said, "You wash yourself." Yu laughed out loud. Just as Li Jinan was about to stand up, she grabbed his hand. Li Jinan turned his head to look at her, but Yu continued to pour water over her body. She whispered, "Let's bathe together. Give me a massage." "I'm afraid I can't take it. You're pregnant. It's all right." Yu's face turned even redder. "Be gentler." For a man that was a huge temptation. Li Jinan was starting to waver. Chapter 1593. When Yu saw that, she slowly took off the clothes that were hanging off her body and asked, "Come." Li Jinan couldn't take it anymore. He unbuttoned his wet shirt. He tossed the wet shirt to the side and pressed his tall body into the bathtub. The bathtub was a double bathtub and it was very spacious. The water was flowing. Li Jinan waved his hand, and hot water flowed in from the 8 inlets on all sides. Yu leaned back. The shower head in her hand was running at a high rate. Very quickly, Li Jinan was completely soaked. She reached out to his belt buckle and said, "Take off your pants too." Her slender hand slowly moved down the belt buckle. Yu's upper body was pressed against his naked upper body. Her voice was very seductive as she whispered, "I missed you." Li Jinan's body sank down. His lips sucked on her earlobe as he murmured, "I missed you too." Yu hugged him and tilted her head up with pleasure. Her eyes narrowed as a comfortable sound came from her throat. It was very light, like a gentle spring breeze. The fire burned with an uncontrollable heat. However, the heat didn't last long. Li Jinan's lips gradually moved away from her earlobe. He panted uncomfortably as he whispered, "We can't do it here. You'll catch a cold." "No, the water temperature is very high." Yu didn't want him to leave. She wrapped her thighs around his. "I'm so hot right now." "No, you're still pregnant. Let's go to bed. Be good." Li Jinan reached out and stroked her hair. "I'll help you wash your hair. Later. Let's." Yu reached out and unzipped his pants. "Don't you want to?" Of course. How could Li Jinan not want to? He wanted to press her down and fiercely express how much he missed her. But he couldn't. Yu was still in the early stages of her pregnancy. This was the most sensitive period. What if something happened to the child? What would he do? No matter how much Li Jinan thought about it, he had to maintain his rationality. He resolutely said, "No." Yu was indignant. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Li Jinan grab the shampoo and start to rub it on her head. It was his first time washing a woman's hair, so he was a little clumsy. Just as Yu had said, the temperature of the water was high. It was so high that there wasn't a single spot on his body that wasn't sweating. There wasn't a single spot that wasn't tense. But no. It was only when she was washing her hair that Li Jinan realized their current position. A man on top and a woman on the bottom. Although he hadn't done anything, Li Jinan's heart skipped a beat. He quickly picked her up and let her sit in front of him. Yu was sitting in front of him, between her legs. Her back was facing him. Li Jinan clumsily applied the shampoo to her hair, and his breathing became heavier. Yu enjoyed the service of her future husband and narrowed her eyes. However, his palm was not obedient. Her soft hand slowly climbed up his trouser leg and playfully rubbed it from side to side. Finally, it pressed on the bulge in an extremely seductive manner. Li Jinan's body became more and more tense, and his movements became slower and slower. "Hurry up." Yu laughed mischievously. "The service is terrible. I want to go back to sleep." Chapter 1594. Li Jinan washed away the bubbles on her head with the water and finally ended the torment. But he was faced with another big problem. What about her body? Bubble bath? Whenever Li Jinan touched her body, it felt like it was on fire. He could only look but not touch. It was so unbearable. He stared at the back of Yu's snow-white neck for a long time before he slowly took a bottle of bubble bath and poured it into the water. Yu watched as the bubbles in front of her slowly increased until they covered her body. When she turned her head, she saw Li Jinan's flushed face. She chuckled and said, "You can leave. I'll do it myself." At this time? Li Jinan had thought of doing so, but that thought had completely vanished. "I don't want to leave." He reached his hand under Yu's armpit and said, "I said I'd help you, so I'll help you. The service must be good. But you're sitting here. It's making me uncomfortable." Yu twisted her body slightly and said, "It's uncomfortable. Li Jinan was fully clothed. When he heard that, he moved even closer and said, "It's uncomfortable for me too." Yu glared at him and began to do it herself. Li Jinan would occasionally reach out to mess with her, but it was only for a short while. Soon Yu was done bathing and ready to get up. Li Jinan was in a dilemma. He sat in the bathtub and didn't dare to get up or go near her. Yu didn't mind. She supported Li Jinan's body with one hand and slowly stood up. Her body was still covered in white bubbles. On her delicate skin, it made her already fair and beautiful skin look even more flawless. Li Jinan closed his eyes and breathed heavily. Yu's lips turned up slightly. She kissed him on the lips and said, "I'll wait for you outside." With that, she stood up and walked out of the bathtub. She grabbed a towel and wrapped it around her body before walking out. Li Jinan was soaking in the warm bubbles. He was starting to doubt his life. This was Li Jinan's house. Yu had never been there before. In the walk-in closet, she had thoughtfully placed pajamas and clothes that would make it easier for her to go out. They were all her measurements. She casually found a set of pajamas and put them on. She sat there for a long time and dried her hair before he walked out of the room. Li Jinan was only wrapped in a towel. His body was wrinkled from being soaked in the water. Yu took one look and began to blow dry her hair as if nothing had happened. When Li Jinan saw the woman, he felt his heart heat up. The evils you bring upon yourself are the hardest to bear. Why did he help her take a bath out of the blue? In such a situation, the discomfort was unbearable, and his entire body was tight with discomfort. He went to the closet and found a pair of shorts to put on before lying down on the bed. Over the past few days, it wasn't just Yu who was tired. Even Li Jinan's body ached from exhaustion. Not only was he physically tired, but he was also mentally exhausted. Li Jinan lay down on the bed, pulled the blanket over his head and closed his eyes. Yu was drying her hair. The sound of the hairdryer was like a lullaby. Li Jinan's eyelids grew heavy. But just as he was about to fall asleep, the sound of the wind turbine stopped. Li Jinan woke up in an instant. A thought flashed through his mind. She's fine. But logic immediately pulled him back to reality. She's fine. You can't do anything. Just stay here. Yu slowly climbed up. Her body was slender and soft. She was as charming as a kitten. Chapter 1595. Li Jinan was speechless. How could Li Jinan not want to? But Yu had only just gotten pregnant. What if she accidentally hurt the child? When Su Qinxi was pregnant, he knew that a woman was forbidden from having sex in the first trimester. Was it really appropriate for Yu to be so wild now? That's not very nice. Li Jinan couldn't bring himself to do it. He had a nagging feeling that he would hurt the child. This child was not as simple as their first child. He wanted to use him as a bargaining chip to negotiate with Qin Shuhua. Unexpectedly, Yu opened her watery eyes and looked at him with a serious expression. She called out, "Li Jinan." Li Jinan's brows furrowed when he heard his name being called out so suddenly. He looked at her and responded with the same solemn tone. Yu looked at Li Jinan with a pained expression and said, "Don't tell me." Li Jinan had a bad feeling about this. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What? Don't tell me that you've been too tired lately and can't do it anymore?" Li Jinan's face darkened when he heard that. I knew it wouldn't be anything good. He narrowed his eyes dangerously as he looked at Yu. Suddenly, he lowered his body and pressed his lower body against hers. He asked, "Can't do it anymore?" Yu could feel it. Her face reddened. She looked at him with a straight face and said, "Otherwise, why would you? You're already in this state. Why aren't you?" Ugh. Before Yu could finish her sentence, Li Jinan sealed her lips. At the same time, his large, frenzied hands began to move. In an instant, the thin material of her clothing was ripped apart. The ferocious attack frightened Yu. She hugged him and said, "Gently? Gently?" Li Jinan knew that, but his pride had been challenged, and his rationality had begun to run away from him. He propped himself up and protected her safely under his body. There wasn't the slightest bit of gravity on her body. However, his hands didn't stop moving. Yu was a little afraid. She cursed silently in her heart. Originally, she had only wanted to let him have his way when she saw how uncomfortable he was. In the early stages of pregnancy, as long as he didn't move too aggressively, everything was fine. She hadn't expected him to be so direct. Just as she was deep in thought, Li Jinan had already lifted her leg up and was gently stroking it. "Yeah." Yu hummed softly and narrowed her eyes. His body suddenly felt heavy, and the feeling of being filled came one after another. Li Jinan didn't dare to use too much force, but he also didn't dare to hold back. He took a deep breath and panted slightly. Relax. Yi Yu turned her head away and said, be gentler. Li Jinan was starting to think of backing out. But if he retreated now, his body would feel extremely uncomfortable. Restraining himself from moving slowly, Li Jinan's patience seemed to have reached its limit in an instant. He gritted his teeth and said, "You vixen." Yi Yu bit her lower lip and let out a soft groan. Her heart, which hadn't been nourished in a long time, was suddenly comforted. She clung to him and panted lightly as she said, "I'm doing this for your own good." Li Jinan restrained himself and slowly straightened up. In a hoarse voice he said, "You're trying to make me feel worse. Hurry up." Chapter 1596. Yi Yu didn't realize that she was torturing her man. Instead she was enjoying it. She hugged him and sang softly. Noon passed quickly. Fortunately, Li Jinan's self-control was amazing, so she didn't toss and turn. Yi Yu leaned lazily in his arms and breathed evenly. Her body was curled up like a lazy cat. She must be a demon sent by heaven to torture me. Li Jinan looked at the black hair of the woman in his arms, and his thoughts gradually drifted away. Tang Sanzang had brought a group of male demons to the west to obtain Buddhist scriptures. Along the way they had encountered all kinds of strange things. It was inevitable that they would feel tired on such a journey. Even if Tang Sanzang was a monk, he was inevitably a human. Since he was a mortal, he couldn't escape the emotions of love, anger, sorrow, joy, and lust. Along the way, so many female demons had tried to seduce him. Could he really be free of lust? Although entering Buddhism required purity of the six senses, the root of lust hadn't been severed. Could it be that with so many female demons, female kings, and rich girls throwing olive branches at him, he really didn't have the slightest intention of giving up on that journey and choosing a peaceful and pure land to live out the rest of his life? Li Jinan didn't think it was possible. Staring at the top of Yi Yu's head, Li Jinan felt like a pitiful monk at that moment. He had been seduced by a female demon, but he was also bound by the precepts. He couldn't act presumptuously. He could only look at her pitifully and feel his heart itch. With a light sigh, Li Jinan hugged Yi Yu and fell into a deep sleep. After some time, Li Jinan felt an itch on his face. On his lips, there was something soft and fragrant that was slowly harassing him. His drowsiness was gradually dispelled and he didn't open his eyes. He reached out and pulled the little demon in front of him into his arms. His head burrowed into the crook of her neck and his body straightened. With a sigh he asked, "What time is it?" 7 o'clock in the evening. Yi Yu nestled comfortably in his arms. Her eyes were still a little hazy from the initial awakening. Li Jinan lowered his head and kissed her deeply on the lips. "Let's go out for dinner. I want to eat hot pot." Yi Yu looked up and hugged his waist. "Eat something spicy." "Eating hot pot in such hot weather?" Yi Yu pouted. "You're not giving it to me?" "Here," Li Jinan said helplessly. "Get up and get dressed." As he spoke, he held her in his arms and was about to sit up. Yi Yu pouted and kissed him on the lips. She said, "Help me put it on. My whole body is sore. I don't want to move." "Lazy worm." Li Jinan nibbled on her lips and said, "I'll get up first." Yi Yu let go of him and he quickly put on his clothes. He found a fresh and conservative dress for her to wear. These clothes were bought at the last minute when he heard that she would be released from prison. They were all in Yi Yu's size, but when she put them on, they were a size too big. "You've lost weight." Li Jinan's heart ached. At the same time he was vexed. "Did we not eat when we came back?" "Yeah, but I'm not hungry," Yi Yu said with a smile. "Let's go for hot pot." Li Jinan blamed himself for his carelessness. When he saw Yi Yu's smile, he kissed her on the lips and said, "Let's go." Just as he walked out of the room, he heard the doorbell ring. The only people who knew where he lived were his lawyer and Li Xiqing and his wife. Li Jinan had no doubt that it was one of them. He went forward to open the door. With one look he was stunned. Chapter 1597. Li Jinan's voice was filled with astonishment. It was as if he had seen something unbelievable. Yi Yu had just put on her shoes. When she heard Li Jinan's voice, she quickly looked over. At the same time Yi Yu asked, "Who is it?" Before she could see who it was, she was blocked by Li Jinan. Li Jinan looked straight ahead with a respectful expression. He cleared his throat and asked, "Dad, how did you know about this place?" "Dad." When Yi Yu heard that word, her heart skipped a beat. Instinctively, she hid behind Li Jinan and didn't dare to come out. Her heart began to race. He reached out and touched his neck subconsciously. On Yi Yuyu's neck was the mark that Li Jinan had left not too long ago. Her hair was disheveled and her face was bare. She didn't look good. Yi Yuyu had thought that they were just going out for a meal. She hadn't expected that Li Jinan's father would come knocking on her door before she even stepped out of the house. This was awkward. Li Xiao looked at Li Jinan. His sharp gaze began to search for the woman behind him. One look at her figure and you could tell that she was a delicate girl. Li Xiao retracted his gaze and stood straight with his hands behind his back. With a straight face he asked, "Can't I come?" "No." Li Jinan was at a loss at the sudden attack. He clumsily explained, "Why didn't you tell me that you were coming? What if I wasn't around?" Li Xiao stood haughtily and said, "You didn't even pick up the phone. I asked your second brother for the address and came here. Who is this behind you?" Li Jinan replied, "This is my girlfriend. We were going out for a meal? Another girlfriend?" Li Xiao's face was stern as he asked, "How many girlfriends do you have?" When Yi Yuyu heard that, she looked up at Li Jinan. Her first reaction was to ask, "You have other girlfriends?" Her voice was obviously northern, but it had the gentleness of a southern woman. It was very comforting. Li Xiao's impression of the girl wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. Before he came, he had already asked his mother about it. Li Jinan had a girlfriend. She was in prison because she had been wrongly accused. The reason Li Jinan had stayed in Beijing for so long was because he had to deal with his girlfriend's matter. That was why he hadn't returned to Kingstown. When she heard the identity, she immediately assumed that she was Li Jinan's other girlfriend. Displeased, Li Xiao sternly called out, "Li Jinan." When Li Jinan heard that, he knew he was in trouble. He said, "Dad, you've misunderstood. I only have one girlfriend. Come, let me introduce her to you." As he spoke, he pulled Yi Yuyu forward and said, "This is my girlfriend. Her name is Yi Yuyu. She's from Yun Town." Yi Yuyu was surprised to be pulled out so suddenly. She smiled and greeted, "Hello, uncle." Li Xiao looked at Yi Yuyu's bare-faced smile. Although she hadn't put on any makeup, she looked a little haggard. However, her smile was very bright, and she looked like a very energetic woman. Li Xiao nodded his head and said, "Hello, I'm Li Jinan's father. My name is Li Xiao." Yi Yuyu didn't know how to respond to such a serious self-introduction. Chapter 1598. Li Xiao did not stand on ceremony and directly walked in. Li Jinan didn't stay there often. Coupled with the fact that he had been very busy recently, the living room was a little messy. Yi Yuyu was a little embarrassed and replied, "I haven't had time to clean up yet. Uncle, please make do with it." Li Xiao looked around and said, "It doesn't matter. I won't be staying here anymore anyway." For a moment, Yi Yuyu didn't understand what he meant. All she could do was look at him pleadingly. Li Jinan walked up and softly said, "Don't be afraid. My father isn't fierce." He wasn't fierce. But with just one look, it gave off a very oppressive feeling. It was just like when she had just gotten to know Li Jinan. It made her feel distant and cold. Yi Yuyu pouted and glanced at Li Xiao. In a hushed voice she asked, "Is there any water at home? Are you afraid of my father?" Li Jinan chuckled with a mischievous look in his eyes. "Am I scarier or is my father scarier?" When Yi Yuyu saw his teasing expression, she felt a little annoyed. She pinched his arm and said, "Stop fooling around. Your father is watching. I'll go see if there's any water." With that, Yi Yuyu turned to leave. Li Jinan turned around and asked, "Dad, why are you here?" Li Xiao stood with his hands behind his back. He did not sit down. Hearing this, he snorted and said, "I'm here to see if you're still alive. I heard that your girlfriend is in jail and you're trying to get her out. Is this the other one?" Li Jinan looked at Li Xiao and chuckled. He asked, "Good things never go out the door. Did Mom tell you that?" "Don't change the subject." Li Xiao lowered his voice and said sternly, "If you mess around outside, I'll break your legs." "How would I dare?" Li Jinan rubbed his nose and replied, "It's this one. I was framed by someone and stayed in there for a few days. I'm out now." Li Xiao sat down and looked at Li Jinan suspiciously. "How did you get in?" Li Jinan gave a simple summary of the incident, but he automatically omitted a few background details. 1. The real murderer was Yi Yuyu's ex-husband. Secondly, Yi Yuyu's sentence was reduced because she was pregnant. Li Xiao's frown deepened. "That's it?" Li Jinan nodded his head. Looking at his expression gave him goosebumps. Could it be that he knew something? How come I heard that your girlfriend was divorced before? Li Zhao's words made Li Jinan's heart sink. As expected, he already knew. He deliberated over his words for a moment before replying, "That's right. Previously, she was deceived by someone and had a marriage of convenience. They were husband and wife in name only but not in reality." Li Xiao had heard a little about it and nodded when he heard this. Yi Yu hid in the corner and listened to their conversation. Her heart was pounding. After calming herself down, she slowly walked out. She specially boiled some iced mineral water and found the tea leaves that Li Jinan had left in the kitchen. She carefully brewed them before taking them out. Holding the cup of tea, Yi Yu pretended not to hear them and said, "Uncle, have some tea." When Li Xiao smelled the aroma of the tea leaves, he knew that they belonged to Li Jinan. He glanced at her and said, "Thank you, Miss Yi." Yi Yu was a little nervous. She laughed dryly and replied, "You're welcome." With that, she sat down beside Li Jinan. Chapter 1599. The atmosphere was quiet for a moment. Yi Yu's body was tense and she was extremely nervous. As long as Li Xiao said a word, she would immediately react. He seemed to be her future father-in-law. Li Xiao picked up the teacup, glanced at it, sniffed it and said, "Did you pour it into the tea bowl?" Yi Yu's heart raced. She felt strangely nervous. She nodded her head and replied, "Yes. Because the teacup was a little small, I poured it into the mug." "Then why don't you just take it out and soak it?" That's because I didn't take it out," Li Jinan interrupted. "Look, the coffee table is full of stuff. I didn't have time to clean it up in the past few days. She just came back today." "You just came back today?" Li Xiao mulled over the words as he glanced at Yi Yu. The mark on his neck was too obvious. However, he quickly looked away and snorted, "Is the matter settled?" There's still some work to be done for the time being. Once I'm done with it, it'll be fine." "Okay, go home early. Your grandpa's mental state is getting worse recently. You should go back and spend more time with him." At the mention of old Captain Li, Li Jinan felt a little guilty and replied, "I understand. Also, do you know that Daesu has been brought to the capital?" "I know, but I don't have time to visit him. I haven't had the time to make a trip there yet," Li Jinan explained. "I'll have time in the future. Daesu might not be used to it. This child is very sensible. He knows that Grandpa and Grandma are lonely. He says that he wants to accompany them, but after all, they grew up together. He will definitely not be used to being separated all of a sudden." Li Zhao's heart ached for his eldest grandson. He looked at Li Jinan and said, "This child is close to you. If you're free, go visit him more often. That way, I won't have any objections to you staying in the capital as long as you want." He scratched his head and said, "I'm afraid I'll have to stay in the capital for a few more days. But I can't stay much longer. The air in the capital is too bad and there are too many people. Kingstown is still the best. It's good for the adults and it's also good for the children." When Yi Yu heard that, her heart skipped a beat. She immediately nudged him. When Li Xiao heard this, his eyes flashed and he said, "A child." Li Jinan did it on purpose, but he immediately acted as if he had let it slip and shut his mouth. When Li Xiao saw this, his face darkened and he said, "What child? Don't tell me that you got her pregnant." "The girl got pregnant." His words were direct. Yi Yu's face immediately heated up. Li Jinan cleared his throat, looking a little awkward as he said, "Dad, you're not married. Do you know that?" Li Zhao's face darkened. "Pregnant before marriage? What's going on? What's going on? Act first and report later." On the surface, he put on an innocent expression and said, "Dad, I'm already so old. I have a girlfriend. It's normal for me to be pregnant. Is there anything wrong with that?" "You bastard." Li Xiao finally understood. This brat was doing it on purpose. Enraged, Li Xiao slammed the cup on the coffee table and said, "If you do this, the reputation of the young lady will be ruined. Don't you have any sense of propriety? No matter how impatient you are, you should at least take precautions." Li Jinan didn't dare to say another word, but he was secretly delighted. Chapter 1600. Yi Yu was feeling extremely awkward. She lowered her head and didn't dare to say a word. She nudged Li Jinan and he immediately snapped out of it. He said honestly, "I was wrong." When Li Xiao saw how Li Jinan was admitting his mistake, he suddenly couldn't vent the anger in his belly. He was his son after all. Li Xiao knew him all too well. From the looks of it, it was clear that his plan had worked. Li Xiao felt uncomfortable no matter how he thought about it. It was highly likely that Li Jinan had done this on purpose. After all, given Yi Yuyu's current situation, even he found it hard to accept, much less Qin Shuhua. Not only had she been divorced, but she had also been imprisoned. Even though it was said that she had been framed, who knew what had really happened? So, this fellow had come to act first and report later because he understood them? You little rascal. Li Xiao was enraged when he thought of that. He said, "You little rascal. You've got guts." Li Jinan didn't say a word. He didn't dare make a sound. Li Xiao couldn't vent his anger. He looked at Yi Yuyu again. At that moment, Yi Yuyu was sitting quietly beside Li Jinan. When her eyes met Li Xiao's, Yi Yuyu looked up to meet his gaze. He seemed a little embarrassed, but he still smiled and quickly looked away. It was obvious that this girl wasn't exactly gutsy, but she had a rather obedient personality. Li Xiao suppressed the anger in his heart and asked, "Have you eaten?" "Not yet. I was just about to head out to eat when you came. Why don't we eat together?" Li Jinan felt that he had never been so ingratiating before. But he was in a disadvantageous position. Li Xiao was the father. As a son, he had to curry favor with his superior first. Li Xiao looked at him and asked, "Shouldn't I?" I should. Li Jinan was extremely unambitious as he said, "Let's go then. Dad, what do you want to eat?" "You have to ask the lady," Li Xiao replied. Yi Yuyu was implicated. When she heard that, she immediately replied, "I'm fine with anything, uncle. I'm not picky." "That won't do. There are some things that you can't eat when you're pregnant." Li Xiao stood up and looked at Yi Yuyu's tummy. "How old are you?" Yi Yuyu was stunned. Without thinking she replied, 26. No, I haven't gone for a checkup yet." Li Xiao nodded. "No matter what, don't overwork yourself and don't eat carelessly." With that, Li Xiao looked at Li Jinan and turned to leave in a huff. Li Jinan felt a little helpless and secretly laughed. He reached out to tug at Yi Yuyu and said, "Come on. Let's go eat." Yi Yuyu's heart was pounding. She tilted her head and softly asked, "Is your father unhappy?" "It's okay," Li Jinan whispered into her ear. "There will be plenty of unhappy times in the future. You'll slowly get used to it." Yi Yuyu wanted to laugh and worry at the same time. She raised her hand and patted him, saying, "Stop fooling around. Does your father not like people like me who get pregnant before marriage? There are many things he doesn't like. He'll get used to it slowly." Yi Yuyu was speechless. Li Xiao had already walked out of the door. He turned around and saw that they were still whispering behind him. He snorted and said, "What are you doing? Don't you want to eat?" "We'll be right there." Li Jinan pulled Yi Yuyu along and whispered, "Don't be afraid. Let's go." Yi Yuyu was perturbed. She had just walked out of the door with Li Jinan when her phone rang. Chapter 1601. The contact Yi Yuyu had left for Yi Tian on her phone was the same one she had made before. There was only one word, "Mom." In the past, she had thought that Yi Tian might have favored her new family more. Therefore she had merely lacked some love and care for herself. After all, everyone had their own lives to live. After the incident with Guan Kui, however, Yi Yuyu's heart had turned completely cold. Yi Tian had treated Guan Kui as her own daughter, but she had an indescribable sense of alienation toward her biological daughter. She had treated her like a mother, but what did she take her for? Her heart had turned completely cold. She looked at the phone that kept ringing. The word on it was extremely ironic. Yi Yuyu pressed the mute button. She had no intention of answering the call. She stuffed the phone into her handbag. Li Jinan glanced at it and asked, "Why aren't you answering it?" "There's no need to answer it," Yi Yuyu said. There was indeed no need to answer it. Guan Yanhong was suspected of having instigated Lao Zhou to cause her miscarriage. Just this suspicion alone was enough for Guan Yanhong to spend a few days in jail. No matter how resourceful he was, he still had to go through the process. Yi Tian was probably about to call Yi Yuyu. She probably wanted Yi Yuyu to explain the situation as a misunderstanding so that she could get Guan Yanhong out on her own. Based on Yi Tian's personality, she would definitely do something like that. Yi Yuyu's heart turned even colder. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Li Jinan. As she looked at Li Xiao, who was walking in front of her, Yi Yuyu felt as if a lifetime had passed. Things remained the same, but the people had changed. In the past, she would never have imagined that she would be involved with someone like Li Jinan. She would never have imagined that she would one day be pregnant with another man's child other than Shenluo, Anne's. She instinctively reached out to touch her tummy. Yi Yuyu tightened her grip on Li Jinan's hand and asked in a low voice, What does your father like to eat? He likes home-cooked food, Li Jinan replied softly. He might not be used to the food from the north. I don't know what to bring him to eat. Yi Yu nodded her head when she heard that. She looked at the time and said regretfully, It's getting late. It's almost 8 p.m. I'm guessing the supermarkets are all closed. Otherwise it would be better to make something ourselves. It's okay. We'll be family sooner or later. You don't have to be so polite. What do you want to eat? Li Jinan looked at Yi Yu's tummy and smiled in relief. I heard that pregnant women are very picky with their food. Is there anything in particular that you'd like to eat? I want to eat something spicy. Yi Yu looked at him. But you Southerners can't handle spicy food, right? Yeah, my father can't handle spicy food. Li Jinan felt a little awkward. Just as he was thinking about what to take Li Xiao to eat, Li Xiao, who was walking in front, suddenly turned his head and said, Have you been to the Rong residence? The Rong family? For a moment, Li Jinan couldn't react. Whose family was the Rong family? Seeing this, Li Xiao snorted and said, It's Qianqian's maiden family. Realization dawned on Li Jinan. Not yet. Shall we go now? Li Xiao said. Li Jinan felt a little uncomfortable and said, Dad, we haven't eaten all day. I'm fine with it, but my child won't be able to take it. When Yi Yu heard that, she immediately waved her hands and said, It's fine, it's fine. Let's go look for your nephew. I'm fine. Chapter 1602. Uncle, it's all right. Let's go together. Yi Yu nudged Li Jinan nervously. Li Xiao glanced at Yi Yu. His expression softened. This child was quite sensible. He looked down at Yi Yu's tummy and said, Let's go eat first. Don't worry about me. I'm not used to northern food. Rong Xian was a southerner, and she would also make food according to Li Jianxian's taste. If they were lucky, they might be able to get some. However, this girl was a northerner and her temperament was rather shy. It was inevitable that she would feel restrained going to a stranger's house, so it was better to forget about it. Yi Yu thought that he was looking down on her, so she felt a little down. She pursed her lips in dejection and didn't say another word. If you have time, you should go for a checkup. She's pregnant, but we don't even know how long she's been pregnant. You muddle-headed parents, this won't do. Li Xiao shook his head and said, I'll leave first. All right. I'll give you a ride. Li Jinan stepped forward and said, Dad, I have a car. Let me give you a ride. You know the way? Yes, there's a restaurant nearby that's not bad. It's on the way. Sure. Li Xiao did not stand on ceremony. After all, he was his son. The three of them got into the car. Yi Yu's cell phone rang again. It was Yi Tian. When Yi Yu saw that, she became very impatient. He turned off his phone and ignored her. Yi Tian made a few calls. She managed to get through, but no one picked up. When he called again, his phone was turned off. Yi Tian flew into a rage and shrieked in exasperation. That little b*****. The servant, who was cleaning up the dinner table at the side, did not dare to speak after hearing this. She glanced at Yi Fuqian. When she received a sharp glare from Yi Tian, she immediately lowered her head and didn't dare to look at her again. Yi Tian's anger grew and she bellowed, Sister Sun. Auntie Sun was startled. She looked up and shouted, Madam, did you call me? Help me go upstairs and get the phone book from my bedside table. This was a completely commanding tone without the slightest bit of respect. It was just like in ancient times when concubines in the palace faced those servants, they would either beat or scold them. Mrs. Sun didn't feel very comfortable, but under such circumstances she had to agree. He ran upstairs as fast as he could to find the phone book. When he handed it over to Yi Tian, the latter snatched it away from him. Yi Tian flipped through 2 pages and found a number. She dialed it. Yi Qianqian's company's anniversary party was scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. The higher-ups were giving a speech, and Yi Qianqian was standing there in a beautiful and elegant short skirt. Suddenly, the handbag in her hand vibrated and her phone rang. Many people looked over. Yi Qianqian immediately switched off the silent mode and smiled apologetically. However, when he lowered his head to take a look, he saw that it belonged to the imperial capital, and his heart was filled with anger. It must be a prank call. However, the next moment the voice rang out again. When Yi Qianqian saw it, she felt that something was amiss. Someone from the capital was beating them up one after another. Perhaps they were really looking for her. Recently, something had happened to Yi Yu in the capital. After some thought, Yi Qianqian got up and went outside to answer the call. Hello, who is this? Yi Qianqian was very polite. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then a female voice said, "I'm your mother." Chapter 1603. Yi Tian was speechless. Did I just curse? She picked up her phone and checked the number. After confirming that there was no mistake, she said, "I'm really your mother, Qian." Yi Qian was speechless. How could she call me by my name? Who are you? Yi Qian calmed down a little. She could vaguely guess who it was. But why did she have to admit that she was her mother just because she said so? What a joke. Yi Qian didn't give her any face. She asked, "In this day and age I've seen phone scams, sex scams and multi-level marketing scams, but I've never seen anyone scamming someone's daughter. If you have something to say, just say it." "I'm busy." When she heard Yi Qian's impatient tone, Yi Tian became angry and said, "What kind of tone is that? What did Yi Zhenhua teach you? Is this how you speak to your elders?" Yi Qian seemed to have heard a joke. She burst out laughing and said, "Elder? What the f***ck? Yi Tian. Don't you feel awkward saying that? Don't you feel embarrassed?" Yi Qian. Yi Tian gritted her teeth. What an ill-bred girl. Yi Tian's voice was so loud that it made Yi Qian's ear itch. Yi Qian picked her ear with her finger and sneered, "Since you're well-bred, don't talk to an ill-bred person like me. I won't be seeing you out." With that, she hung up the phone. Yi Qian was extremely displeased. She put her phone back in her pocket and walked back inside. Before she could take a few steps, her phone rang again. It was the same call. Yi Qian rolled her eyes and answered the call impatiently. "What are you trying to do? Spit it out. I don't have time to beat around the bush with you." Yi Tian had never been so infuriated. She felt extremely uncomfortable. However, when she thought of her husband who was still imprisoned in the police station, she restrained her temper and said, "Qian, I know you don't like me. It's good that you know. Why did you have to say it out loud? Aren't you asking to be humiliated?" Yi Qian interrupted her and yawned. Yi Tian almost threw the phone. She gritted her teeth and yelled, "Don't go too far. Are you done?" When Yi Qian heard Yi Tian's angry voice, she was secretly pleased and said, "I'm hanging up after you're done talking." "Oh." Yi Tian hurriedly said, "Qian, I know you don't like me, but I have to tell you some bad news." "Bad news? Or do I have to tell him?" Yi Qian's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't say anything. When Yi Tian saw that Yi Qian was silent, she deliberated over her words and said, "As you know, Mom started a new family, but your sister, get to the point." Yi Qian's impatient voice grew louder and louder. "I told you I was busy. You've been living with a beast for so long that you don't understand human language anymore." Yi Tian took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. She replied, "I'm looking for Yi Yuyu. I tried calling her but she wouldn't pick up. I was hoping that you could help me contact her and pass on my message." "Oh, what is it?" "You, Mommy knows that I was wrong. Please come home, okay? What happened to Yi has nothing to do with you. I already know that it was Mommy's fault. Your Uncle Guan is innocent. Please forgive him and forgive me, okay?" Chapter 1604. Yi Tian felt awkward and said, "I'm saying this to you. You can just help me convey the gist of what I mean. Is that alright, Qian?" "I see." Yi Qian sounded like she was deliberating over something. Yi Tian was a little uncertain and asked, "Can you help me convey the message?" "What's in it for me?" Yi Qian asked. She sounded like she was looking forward to it. Yi Tian was a little annoyed. This girl really had no manners at all. She really didn't know how Yi Zhenhua had raised his child. How did he manage to bring up such a character? Yi Tian took a deep breath and said gently, "The next time you come to the capital, I'll make some time to accompany you, okay? Tell me what you want and I'll buy it for you. If you have any difficulties in life, you can ask me. We're mother and daughter. You don't have to stand on ceremony with me." "Oh." Yi Qian seemed to be considering it. Suddenly she laughed and said, "Haha, what if I don't convey the message? Qian, I know that I was wrong in the past, but the past is the past. This matter is really important. Don't throw a tantrum with me, okay?" Yi Tian lowered her voice and tried to persuade her earnestly. Yi Qian felt goosebumps all over her skin when she heard that. She quickly waved her hands and said, "Don't. I can't take it. You abandoned us for a man in the past. What do you think are the chances of you saying something like that now?" Yi Tian was speechless. Yi Qian continued, "Besides, who gave you the face to call yourself Mom? Ah, what a joke." Yi Tian was furious and asked, "Yi Qianshan, is that what your father taught you?" "Yes," Yi Qianshan replied matter-of-factly. "My father said that we must know how to be grateful and know how to protect ourselves. When it comes to ingrates and traitors, there's no need to be polite." "Who are you calling an ingrate?" Yi Qianshan exclaimed and said, "So you didn't hear me clearly? I'm talking about you. I'm saying that you Yi Tian are an ingrate. Can you hear me clearly now? I'm saying that you Yi Tian are an ingrate. Did you hear me clearly?" Yi Tian was so angry that her heart, liver, spleen and lungs ached. Her belly was full of anger and it was difficult for her to vent it. Yi Qianshan continued, "Do you want me to make a broadcast for you so that you can listen to it?" Yi Tian couldn't take it anymore and hung up the phone. She slammed her phone hard on the table and screamed, "Bastards! You're all beasts. Bitches." When Sister Sun heard this, she lowered her head and said nothing. However, the phone on the table that he had just hung up suddenly rang. Yi Tian was a little surprised. She took a look and realized that it was Yi Qianshan. Despite her displeasure and anger, Yi Tian still had a favor to ask. Moreover, Yi Qianshan had called back. Could it be that she knew she had done something wrong and called to apologize? When Yi Tian thought about this, the anger in her subsided a little. He picked up the phone and put it to his ear. Yi Qianshan didn't hear Yi Qianshan's voice, but it didn't matter. She muttered to herself, "Yi Tian, let me tell you something. I already know what you've just said. I think your apology is very sincere." Yi Tian's heart relaxed and she said, "It's good that you know. I sincerely apologize to you. Thank you, Qianshan." Chapter 1605. Without waiting for Yi Tian to react, Yi Qianshan hung up the phone. The busy tone on the other end of the line made Yi Tian explode with rage. She flung the phone at Yi Tian and screamed, "Yi Qianshan!" The phone smashed into the beautiful blue and white vase in the living room. The fragile vase made a crisp sound. The fresh flowers fell to the ground, and the clear water spilled onto the floor. The vase shattered into pieces. When Auntie Sun saw it, her face turned pale. She glanced at Yi Tian and exclaimed, "Oh my God! That was Sir's favorite vase. What should we do?" Yi Tian's expression changed as well. How could she lose her composure in front of a servant? Yi Tian kept a straight face and said, "You're making a fuss out of nothing. What's there to be surprised about? Hurry up and clean it up." Auntie Sun didn't dare to say anything else. In this household, Yi Tian had always been arrogant and sharp in front of everyone except Guan Yanhong. Especially recently after Guan Kui's death. Auntie Sun didn't dare to touch her. After cleaning up the broken vase, she quietly went upstairs. She took out her phone and took a picture of the broken vase before sending it to Guan Yanhong's WeChat account. She typed, "Sir, the vase is broken. Madam was in a bad mood and accidentally broke it." As soon as the message was sent, it reached Guan Yanhong's phone. At present, Guan Yanhong was only a suspect. Coupled with the lawyer's mediation, Guan Yanhong's freedom was not restricted. His phone was by his side. When he received the message from Auntie Sun, he specially enlarged the picture. When he saw the familiar patterns on it, Guan Yanhong flew into a rage and roared, "You be ****starred." The lawyer was in the middle of communicating with the police. When they heard Guan Yanhong's loud shout, many people looked over. Guan Yanhong quickly sat down and temporarily closed his eyes to rest. Yi Qianshan put her phone away. She was in a good mood. All the frustration she had felt before leaving the house had been vented. Yi Qianshan put her phone back into her bag and walked briskly inside. It was rumored that Eurasian Comics had invited an important guest for their anniversary celebration. When Yi Qianshan walked in, she saw the commotion. "Let's welcome the chairman of Eurasian Comics, Mr. O Ming." When Yi Qianshan heard the name, she immediately squeezed through the crowd and looked inside. Sure enough, he saw the two people who were slowly walking towards him at a glance. O Ming seemed to be in a good mood. He was wearing a burgundy suit. His hairstyle was trendy, simple, masculine, and handsome. Yu Lily stood tall and straight beside him, holding his arm with a smile on her face. This combination was very eye-catching. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. Especially under the obvious contrast of their figures, they seemed extremely compatible. Yu Lily's watery eyes scanned the crowd and quickly spotted Yi Qianshan, who was desperately trying to squeeze her way forward. Yi Qianshan was dressed like a lady that day, which was a little different from her usual style. However, she looked even more delicate and cute. When Yu Lily saw her, she was very happy and waved at her. Yi Qianshan was so happy that she almost screamed. Chapter 1606. What the F asterisk CK. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. Yi Chanshan suddenly felt like a wife who had worked hard for many years had finally become a woman. When she saw Yu Lily's flushed face and happy expression, she felt an indescribable sense of relief. Finally. My daughter has grown up. Yu Lily is married and pregnant, and Yi Yu is living with Li Jinnan. Now I'm the only single person in that house. Oh no. Now in addition to me, there's also a son of AB asterisk TCH psychologist. After the higher-ups had finished speaking, it was O Ming's turn. When he was done, he handed the microphone to Yu Lily. Yu Lily looked at Yi Chanshan and asked with a smile, "Everyone knows me, right?" The colleagues who had worked with Yu Lily in the past all felt a sense of closeness and affection. When they heard Yu Lily's words, many of them laughed and replied in unison, "We do." "That's great." Yu Lily's eyes turned into crescents as she smiled and said, "I'll give everyone a bonus this month." Everyone laughed in unison and cheered, "Hooray!" From the beginning to the end, Yu Lily had only said 2 sentences, but the response was the greatest. O Ming smiled and held her in his ear as he whispered, "You can do that? You're amazing, my wife." "You flatter me." Yu Lily smiled and said, "I'm going to look for Chanshan. Let go of me." Together. O Ming didn't think there was anything wrong with that. He put his hand on her waist and looked at her slightly bulging belly. He was in a good mood. Yi Chanshan watched as they walked toward her in pairs. She shook her head and said, "So, you're all here to show off your love to me?" "Of course not," O Ming replied in a good mood. His pair of peach blossom eyes shone with happiness and seriousness as he said, "Are we such shallow people in your eyes? We're clearly here to show off our child." Yi Chanshan was speechless. Yu Lily laughed out loud and said, "Don't believe him. The child is still so young. What's there to show off?" All right. Your existence is a form of harm to me. You're bullying a single person." O Ming glanced at her and asked, "Still no movement?" "What movement? Not even a fart." Yi Chanshan looked aggrieved. "I'm already so old. Why can't you give me a man? Do you want me to spend the rest of my life alone? When the time comes, I'll be able to find a partner. What's the rush?" O Ming said calmly. "It's too noisy here. Let's go somewhere quiet? What's there to change? This year's annual meeting has just started. I haven't drawn anything in the past few years. I must try my luck this time." Yi Chanshan reached out and pulled Yu Lily along. "There are too many people here. Let's go somewhere less crowded." As he spoke, he pulled Yu Lily to a corner and stared at the screen. Everyone had a share in the lucky draw. There weren't too many people in the company, so it would take some time for them to take turns to touch the balls. Yi Chanshan was envious when she saw the other people coming down with big prizes in their arms. Chapter 1607. That's the second prize. Is that all you've got? Yu Lily nudged her. Isn't the first prize great? That's $200,000. You'll still have to spend your own money on the trip. Can't you be more ambitious? It's not the same. I'm so unlucky. I'd be lucky to get the second prize. Yi Chanshan said matter-of-factly. What's so bad about the trip? You'll get a paid vacation if you get the first prize. The company will pay for the plane tickets and accommodation. That's a lot of money. Besides, going to Venice is a kind of nostalgia. Yu Lily laughed. So what if it's feelings? With your stupid luck, it'd be a miracle if you got the first prize. F asterisk CK. Yi Chanshan suddenly exclaimed. The first prize has been won. What kind of luck is this? I actually got money. Money. Yu Lily said, didn't you say you didn't want money? Bah. Who doesn't want money? It's $200,000. $200,000. You can buy a toilet in Kingstown with that. Sob. Yi Chanshan hugged Yu Lily and wailed. I was just saying. If I get the first prize, I wouldn't mind at all. Yu Lily laughed and said, it's your turn. Hurry up. Yi Chanshan immediately straightened up, turned around and ran toward the stage. In a few steps she was already on the stage. Yi Chanshan was very popular in the company. The MC had a good relationship with Yi Chanshan. Seeing her serious expression, the MC handed the microphone to her and said, Miss Yi, there's still a second prize, a paid vacation for 5 days and 6 nights in Venice. There's also a third prize, a laptop worth $18,888. Yi Chanshan was very excited and said, I want the second prize. The people around her began to jeer and sigh. The MC also laughed and said, I'd like to support you, but given your luck in the past few years, I think you might be able to win a porcelain doll. The crowd roared with laughter. Someone said, the porcelain doll welcomes you. Yi Qianshan has never won a prize before, let alone this year. However, you'll definitely get a consolation prize. Don't be discouraged. Yi Qianshan was enraged by his laughter. She shouted fiercely, shut up. With that, she decided to ignore them. She reached into the box and deliberately stirred it with her hand. When the MC saw how serious Yi Qianshan was, he looked down and said with a straight face, Yi Qianshan is about to show off. Everyone listen to what she has to say. Yi Qianshan rolled her eyes at him. She looked at the microphone in front of her and shouted, Balala Energy second prize change? As he spoke, he reached out his hand and took out a ball. The people around her laughed so hard that a large number of them collapsed. Yi Qianshan handed the ball to the MC, who quickly took it from her. Looking at the audience, the host said with a serious expression, although I already know the result, seeing how serious Qianshan is, I can't bear to expose her. He twisted the ball open and took out the paper inside. The host teased. Just as he was about to say something, his eyes suddenly widened. The host spread out the piece of paper and looked it up and down several times before saying with certainty, Congratulations, Yi Qianshan. A consolation prize? Someone said. Chapter 1608. Yi Qianshan was initially annoyed at being laughed at, but she was already prepared to receive a consolation prize. But when he heard the host say second prize, he immediately became alert. Yi Qianshan reached out and snatched the piece of paper. When she saw the words on it, she screamed, Oh my God! The surrounding people started to sigh. What? Is that for real? Ah! After so many years, are you finally going to win? To be honest, I've never seen such bad luck. Don't expose people when they're in a difficult situation. When Yi Qianshan saw the piece of paper, she was wild with joy. She laughed out loud and exclaimed, Oh my God! I got it! I got it! I finally got it! Wow! The host looked gratified and teased, Wow, you finally won. Who is it? The crowd roared with laughter. Yi Qianshan snapped, Go away. Don't cause trouble. The host came forward and said, 5 days and 6 nights in Venice, isn't it inappropriate for a single dog like you to go? Why don't you bring me along? Me. I'm going too. Wait for me. Yi Qianshan, don't forget about Xia Yuha by Daming Lake. Yi Qianshan wore a look of disdain when she heard that. But when he saw those words, he was very proud of himself. He put his hands on his waist and laughed, No, I won't take anyone with me. I want to travel the world by myself. As he spoke, he took the host's microphone and said, Who's next? There's still a laptop. Come quickly. After saying that, he stuffed the microphone back and ran down the stairs. When Lily saw her running down happily, she smiled and said, Your luck must have been accumulated over the past few years, and you've been saving it for this one surprise, haven't you? Ah. Yi Qianshan was overjoyed and replied, That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. *CK. It's next month. We only have less than 20 days to prepare. I'm so nervous. What should I do? Just as Lily was about to say something to comfort her, Yi Qianshan stared at the piece of paper and laughed strangely. She shouted, Wah! I'm going to Venice. Lily, Ming smiled and said, Let's go for supper. Oh now. Yi Qianshan perked up and said, Wait for me. I'll go and exchange this ticket first. Lily watched as Yi Qianshan ran away and asked, Are the tickets for the lucky draw for 2 people? Yi Qianshan asked. Ming glanced at her and said, Yes. Wouldn't it be a waste to go alone? Lily looked at him and shook her head. What a pity. He's a single dog. When Yi Qianshan came over and heard what Lily had said, she immediately shouted in an exaggerated manner, How dare you speak ill of me? However, he did not mind and carefully placed the ticket back into his bag. He leaned forward and asked in a low voice, Could it be that you deliberately arranged this for me? Don't think too much about it. I'm not that free. Lily's face was full of disdain. If I were the one who arranged it, I would definitely get a single person. When Yi Qianshan heard that, she was relieved and said, It's fine. I can go alone. I've always wanted to carry a backpack and go on a vacation. But I don't have a choice. I don't have the money. Now that luck has come, no one can stop it. Ah. That. Chapter 1609. Hey, don't show off too much. Be careful that you don't sprain your waist. Yu Lily touched her waist and said, "You've gotten fatter." Yi Chanshan immediately hugged her belly and said, "Go to hell. You're the one who's fatter. This is called sexy." "You've gotten fatter," Yu Lily insisted. Yi Chanshan laughed and rolled her eyes. "I'm not going to argue with a pregnant woman." She then asked, "What are we having for supper?" "Let's go. You'll know when we get there." Yu Lily took her hand and quickly walked out of the hotel. Oming sat in the front seat and Yu Lily and Yi Chanshan sat in the back. The driver drove steadily and they soon arrived at the place to eat. It was a restaurant that looked like it was decorated very well. If it were Yi Chanshan, she would probably never come to such a place in her life. One look and you could tell it was expensive. But since she was following Oming and Yu Lily, Yi Chanshan didn't stand on ceremony. After entering, she casually ordered something and handed it over to Yu Lily. The three of them ate quickly. Yu Lily and Yi Chanshan hadn't seen each other for a while, so they chatted and talked a lot. Yi Chanshan liked to drink a little, especially when she was happy. Yu Lily was pregnant and couldn't drink, so Yi Chanshan could only have a few drinks with Oming. They ordered flower wine with a low alcohol content. Yi Chanshan only drank a few glasses. Her cheeks were slightly red and she looked very well. It was a little late and Yu Lily began to feel sleepy. Yi Chanshan had no choice but to go home. The couple sent Yi Chanshan back to her apartment and slowly drove away. Yi Chanshan was dressed more formally that day. When the security guard saw Yi Chanshan, he was stunned and said, "Miss Yi, you look really good today." Yi Chanshan felt a little proud when she heard that. As she touched her keys, she said, "Which day don't I look good?" The security guard laughed, but he didn't dare to laugh too obviously. He said hypocritically, "Yes, you look good every day." Yi Chanshan stared at him and said, "What do you mean? You're so hypocritical. You won't have any friends if you act like this." The security guard laughed and quickly helped her press the elevator button. "Hurry up. Your boyfriend is already back. He's probably waiting anxiously." Bah. Yi Chanshan's face was full of disdain as she said, "He's not my boyfriend." The security guard obviously didn't believe it and asked, "Quarrel?" "Shut up." Yi Chanshan got into the elevator. "That's it. Goodbye." As the elevator doors slowly closed, Yi Chanshan felt even more displeased. Boyfriend? When did Shinjilia become her boyfriend? Oh. However, on second thought, they were right to think so. After all, a man and a woman living together, even if they were relatives, they wouldn't be so harmonious, right? Holy shit, so there was a reason why she had been single for so many years. With such a big man here, no peach blossoms would be able to enter. In this way, how was she going to get out of singlehood? No way. She couldn't let things go on like this. She had to chase him away. As Yi Chanshan was lost in thought, the elevator arrived. Yi Chanshan walked down the stairs and had just stuck the key in when the door opened from the inside. Shinjilia's hair was half dry. When he saw her flushed cheeks, he frowned and sniffed. "Have you been drinking?" For some reason, Yi Chanshan felt a little guilty and quickly said, "I." However, she quickly realized what was going on. She could do whatever she wanted. What did he have to do with her? She angrily put her hands on her hips and said, "Yeah. What's wrong?" Shinjilia didn't look too happy. He reached out to take her bag and asked, "Who are you with?" At 10 chapters. Unbelievable. Ah. Thanks for the monthly votes. Chapter 1610. When Yi Chanshan heard that, she immediately straightened her back and said, "Why do you care who I go out with?" As she spoke, she reached out to push Shinjilia away and yelled, "Get out of my way." Block the way. Shinjilia could smell the alcohol on her. He frowned deeply and said, "You look so guilty. Did you go out with a man? You're dressed so nicely. Did you go on a date?" When Yi Chanshan heard that, she felt a little smug. She turned around and looked at Shinjilia. "What's wrong with you today? Why are your eyes so sharp?" When Shinjilia heard that, he sneered and looked away. He hung her bag up and said, "You think you're flying off the handle just because I complimented you? Hey, what's this?" As Shinjilia spoke, he reached his hand into the gap of her bag. Yi Chanshan's bag wasn't closed, and the ticket for a 5-day and 6-night trip to Venice was exposed. When Yi Chanshan saw Shinjilia reaching for it, she was shocked and immediately stopped him. "Stop. What are you doing?" But it was too late by the time she spoke. Shinjilia pulled on the corner of her bag that was exposed, and the ticket was exposed to the air. Venice? Yi Qianshan was nervous. She rushed forward to snatch it back and yelled, "Give it back to me." However, Shinjulia quickly moved his hand away. Using his height advantage, he raised his hand high and looked at the words on it. Eurasian Comics Anniversary Second Prize. Shinjulia read the words on it and suddenly understood. "I was wondering why you were so grand today. So it's the company's anniversary celebration." Yi Qianshan exploded in anger and said, "Give it back to me, you stupid idiot." Shinjulia was used to being scolded, so he pretended not to hear her and said, "Ha ha ha. I knew a woman like you wouldn't be able to get a date with a man. It's too difficult for someone like you to be single. Ah ha ha." His unrestrained mockery made Yi Qianshan angry. Yi Qianshan wasn't tall. She was the typical height of a southern girl. At that moment, when she saw Shinjulia's annoying smile, she immediately jumped up. When Shinjulia saw that, he immediately dodged. But it was too late. Yi Qianshan kicked his knee hard. Shinjulia lost his balance and fell backward. She sat down on the sofa in shock. Yi Qianshan took the opportunity to take the ticket back and turned to leave. She glared at Shinjulia with a huff and raised her foot to kick him. "What a foul mouth you have. Serves you right for being single." Oh. With that, he turned around and left. When Shinjulia saw how angry Yi Qianshan was, he laughed. He felt a little helpless and a little embarrassed. He muttered, "Don't tell me he's really angry?" Yi Qianshan didn't know if she heard it or not, but when she returned to her room, she deliberately slammed the door shut. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. When Shinjulia saw this, he understood. Well, it didn't matter if she was really angry or pretending to be angry. In any case, she wasn't in a good mood. Shinjulia stood up and used a towel to dry his hair. After mulling over what he was going to say, he went forward and knocked on the door. "Ahem, my dear Miss Qianshan, I left you dinner. Would you like to have some?" It was quiet for 1 second, 2 seconds. Chapter 16:11. Yi Qianshan glared at him angrily. Just as Shinjulia was about to speak, Yi Qianshan suddenly said, "I'm not eating. Get lost." Then the door was slammed hard. The door almost hit Shinjulia's nose. Shinjulia rubbed his nose. Fear lingered in his heart as he said, "If you don't want to eat, then don't eat. Why are you so angry?" Cough cough, was what he said just now a little too much? But did I say anything wrong? Shinjulia sighed softly. With a helpless look on his face, he muttered to himself, "As expected, the more loser one is, the harder it is to accept the truth." Shinjulia had done it on purpose. When Yi Qianshan heard his words, she gritted her teeth in anger. Yi Qianshan gritted her teeth. She looked at the ticket and took a deep breath. Calm down, calm down. Don't make any decisions while you're angry. After a few days, I'll have a showdown with him and chase him away." At that moment, no matter how delicious and professional Shinjulia's cooking was, it couldn't quell the rage in her heart. Yi Qianshan considered herself to be very rational. Yi Qianshan carefully put the plane ticket away. Her heart was filled with relief. She found her passport and happily went to find clothes to take a bath. Yi Qianshan took a shower and washed her hair. She realized that she had washed all the towels in the house that morning. They were hanging on the balcony outside. Her hair was wet and uncomfortable. If she didn't dry it, she wouldn't even be able to blow it. But that guy was definitely still on the sofa. If he went out now, he would definitely see him again. Forget it. It doesn't matter if I don't wipe it once in a while, but I get annoyed whenever I see that fellow. She made do with a wet towel and quickly turned on her computer. She sat in front of it and started working. Her wet hair was draped over her shoulders. The room was air-conditioned and it was very comfortable. However, there was a price to pay for such comfort. In the middle of the night, Yi Qianshan felt sore all over. He stretched and his whole body was steaming. He got up and prepared to go to the toilet. Just as he got off the bed, his head felt dizzy. Yi Qianshan staggered a little as she opened the door and walked out. She could clearly feel that she wasn't in a good state. As soon as he opened the door, he saw that there was not much light in the living room. The lights in the living room were not turned on, and the bright light from the TV vaguely illuminated the living room. When he heard the door open, Shinjulia turned around and asked, "You're awake?" Yi Qianshan didn't want to talk to him. She was extremely sleepy. After going to the bathroom, he sat on the toilet. As soon as he sat down, his buttocks were frozen by the toilet bowl. He reached out and touched his forehead. It seemed to be a little hot. Yi Qianshan frowned and muttered, "I can't be that unlucky. After all, she hadn't been sick for many years." Why did he suddenly have a fever? Yi Qianqian got up and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman in the mirror looked very young. There were obvious dark circles under his eyes. And now his whole face was red. Yi Qianqian turned on the tap and splashed some water on her face before quickly walking out. Shenjilia was watching a football match when Yi Qianqian snorted and said, "If you're not asleep at this hour, you might die of a heart attack." "It doesn't matter. Tomorrow is the weekend." Shenjilia yawned and suddenly turned to look at Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian. Chapter 16:12. I might have gone overboard with what I said last night. I'm sorry. Yi Qianqian paused and turned to look at him. This guy is actually apologizing to me? He's actually apologizing? Yi Qianqian was very surprised. She looked at Shenjilia as if she had seen a ghost. It was rare for this guy to apologize. Although it was a little overboard, she decided to forgive him. As she was thinking about it, Shenjilia said with a serious expression, "I've thought about it for a long time. Although we're considered very close now, there are still some truths that I can't say. You don't mind, do you?" Yi Qianqian's original thoughts were instantly dashed. She glared at Shenjilia and didn't say a word. She turned around and stormed into her room. It was a little cold in the air-conditioned room. Yi Qianqian shivered and turned off the air conditioner. Her head was dizzy. Yi Qianqian hugged the blanket and fell into a deep sleep. She didn't know how long she slept. She felt a wave of discomfort wash over her. She felt nauseous. Yi Qianqian sat up and retched. She didn't vomit anything. She just felt very uncomfortable. The sky was already bright. She looked at the time. It was already past 10 in the morning. Yi Qianqian's entire body hurt. When she stood up, she felt as if her bones were about to fall apart. She felt nauseous again. Yi Qianqian didn't even bother to put on her shoes. She ran to the bathroom. Shenjilia had unknowingly fallen asleep on the sofa while watching the game. When he heard the sound of barefoot running behind him, his eyelids twitched. He quickly stretched and let out a long yawn. Ugh! The sound of Yi Qianqian vomiting drove away Shenjilia's drowsiness. Shenjilia opened his eyes suddenly and sat up. He turned his head in the direction of the bathroom and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Yi Qianqian was too busy vomiting to care about him. She threw up the dinner she had the night before. In the end, there was nothing left to vomit. All she could do was throw up a few mouthfuls of acid. Yi Qianqian was about to collapse. Her face was flushed. She hugged the toilet bowl and reached out to flush it. She was exhausted. She lay by the sink with her eyes half closed. She looked like she was about to die. Shenjilia walked over barefoot. When he saw her in such a state, he handed her a few tissues and said, "Wipe yourself." Yi Qianqian pulled it over angrily. She touched her mouth and stuffed the tissue back. Shenjilia was instantly disgusted and retorted, "Can't you have some common decency? How could you do such a thing?" Yi Qianqian rolled her eyes at him and said, "Count yourself lucky that I didn't puke on you." Shenjilia asked, "Are you not feeling well?" "Yeah. How can I be comfortable when I'm pregnant?" Yi Qianqian was in a bad mood. She waved her hand and refused to talk to him. Shenjilia tossed the tissue away. When he heard that, he suddenly burst out laughing and said, "Someone like you can get pregnant. Dream on." Yi Qianqian instantly felt as if 1,000 arrows had pierced through her heart. What did he mean by that? A woman like her is the best, okay. However, she didn't have any strength left in her, so she couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Yi Qianqian slowly got up and staggered a little. When Shenjilia saw this, he stepped forward and asked with uncertainty, "Is she really pregnant?" Chapter 16:13. Shenjilia exclaimed exaggeratedly. He immediately reached out to touch her forehead and asked, "Do you have a fever?" Yi Qianqian pushed him away and said domineeringly, "You're the one with a fever. Get lost." Shenjilia said, "Hey, don't distort my pronunciation. I clearly said I have a fever." Yi Qianqian snorted. She didn't have the energy to argue with him. She didn't want to walk anymore. Her body was sore and weak. She simply collapsed on top of him. Yi Qianqian looked up and said, "What did I do to deserve this? I'm dying of discomfort." Shenjilia looked at her with disdain and said, "You're the only one who can be so energetic when you have a fever." As he spoke, he helped her out of the room and said, "Put on your shoes. I'll take you to get an injection." "No, I don't want an injection. Don't worry about me. Go watch your game." Yi Qianqian waved her hand and lay on the sofa. Hey, it's still warm. Shenjilia had just lain on the sofa, so of course it was warm. When Shinjilia saw her like that, he reached out to cover her with a blanket and said, "The game is over. Let's go. I'll take you to get an injection." "Go away. Do I need you to take me to get an injection? I can heal myself." Shinjilia sneered. "Stop fooling around. I've never heard of an idiot having such a function." Yi Qianshan said, "Get lost." Yi Qianshan lay on the sofa. She had no intention of getting up for an injection. Shinjilia touched his head and thought for a moment before saying, "I'll go buy you something to reduce your fever. Let's check your temperature first. Do you have a thermometer?" "No." Yi Qianshan said matter-of-factly. "What about flu medicine?" "No." Yi Qianshan didn't look the least bit remorseful. She said, "I've never fallen sick. These things are useless to me." "Shameless. Then why do you have a fever now? You're the one with a fever. You're misdiagnosing me." Yi Qianshan was in high spirits. She got up and said, "I'm hungry." Shinjilia asked, "What do you want to eat?" "Braised pork ribs, spicy chicken, yuxiang shredded pork." As Yi Qianshan spoke, she found the food tasteless. "Do you have sugar?" "No." Shinjilia repeated Yi Qianshan's words and denied it flatly. Yi Qianshan had a look of disdain on her face as she said, "You good for nothing. You don't even have candy. What use are you?" Shinjilia replied, "Come on, big sister. Don't do it anymore. I'll take you to the doctor, okay?" "Not good, get lost." Yi Qianshan was annoyed. "Why don't you just go and buy me medicine? Why do you have to talk so much nonsense? How can you take medicine so casually? You're already burning up like this and you don't even have a thermometer. How am I supposed to buy it?" Shinjilia was defeated by her and he asked kindly, "Do you want to wear those shoes?" Yi Qianshan ignored him. She closed her eyes and fell asleep on the sofa. Shinjilia was on the verge of breaking down. He twisted his hands and gestured at her neck. He really wanted to strangle her to death. This woman was too annoying. In the end, Shinjilia didn't lay his hands on her. Instead, he went to the shoe cabinet and found a pair of shoes that were easier for her to wear. Yi Qianshan had already fallen asleep. When she felt him grab her foot, she immediately kicked it off and turned over to continue sleeping. Shinjilia held her ankle firmly and said in a low voice, "Behave yourself." Yi Qianshan frowned and kicked it off again. She asked, "What are you doing?" Shinjilia didn't say anything. After he put the shoes on her, he lifted her up. That. Chapter 16-14. Yi Qianshan was caught off guard and jumped in fright. She opened her eyes and exclaimed, "F***ck. Shinjilia, you've gone mad." Shinjilia didn't say a word. He opened the door and walked out. Yi Qianshan couldn't struggle at all. She was on the verge of tears and said, "Big brother, put me down. I'll walk on my own. Can't you wait for me to get changed?" Shinjilia glanced at her and said in annoyance, "Wouldn't it have been over if you had done this earlier?" Yi Qianshan was finally put down. She immediately scrambled inside. Shinjilia looked at her back and snorted. "You're quite spirited. Tsuke, you really have the constitution of a cockroach." About 10 minutes later, there was still no movement from Yi Qianshan. Shinjilia waited outside and felt that something was wrong. He asked, "What are you doing inside?" There was no reply from inside. Shinjilia stood up from the sofa and knocked on the door. "Yi Qianshan." The sound of footsteps came from inside. Yi Qianshan had just opened the door when Shinjilia felt a gust of hot air hitting him in the face. Yi Qianshan's cheeks were flushed. It was obvious that she was in a bad state. She had changed into a set of simple and light sportswear. It was short-sleeved and looked very thin. Her shoes were half covered and her eyes were half closed. When Shinjilia saw Yi Qianshan's state, he reached out and touched her forehead. It was frighteningly hot. This was at least a high fever. There was no way he was fooling around. Shinjilia frowned and said, "Let's go. Your IQ isn't high to begin with. Don't let the fever turn you into an idiot again. Otherwise you'll never be able to get married." F***ck Shinjilia. Can't you watch your mouth? Yi Qianshan pushed him and said, "It's rare to see a girl as smart as me." Shinjilia looked at her in disdain and said, "You? Smart?" Yi Qianshan was indignant. She put her hands on her hips, but before she could say anything she was pulled by Shinjilia. Shinjilia dashed into her room. When Yi Qianshan saw that, she panicked and asked, "What are you doing?" Without a word, Shinjilia opened the closet and took out a thin coat from Yi Qianshan. He put it on Yi Qianshan and said, "It's windy outside today. Put on some clothes. Let's go." Yi Chanshan swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. With her arm held by Shinjilia, she felt her eyelids grow heavy. She didn't have much strength left in her, so she didn't want to walk anymore. He half squatted on the ground and said weakly, "I feel like vomiting." Shinjilia glanced at her and said, "Go ahead and throw up first. You can leave after you're done." "I can't spit it out." "Then let's go." Shinjilia walked up and lifted Yi Chanshan in his arms. "Take a nap. We'll be there soon." His sudden action made Yi Chanshan's heart skip a beat. Shinjilia was a man who loved cleanliness. He always had a faint scent on him. This smell was different from perfume, and it was also different from the smell of other men. It was an indescribable scent. It smelled good and made her feel very comfortable. Yi Chanshan didn't know that Shinjilia was so strong. It seemed effortless for him to carry her. Yi Chanshan's body was getting hotter and hotter, and her vision was getting blurry. But her eyes were fixed on Shinjilia. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.